Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Coen Brothers, and boy are we excited about this one, Michael.
Oh boy, boy. Wait, was that a question? Yes, we are excited about this one, Abe.
Well, it's what, you said it in a previous podcast, it's one of your favorites.
I think it's one of everyone's favorites of all time in film, having won Best Picture and etc. And we're especially excited, I think, coming off of, you said it's the Coen Brothers, right?
Yes, I did.
All right. And we both said our names incidentally, so we're good to go.
Yeah.
We can just get over ourselves and move on.
Yeah.
2007's No Country for Old Men, put out by Miramax. I think it's especially gratifying because we're coming off of movies that I found very, very fulfilling to cover, but also are widely considered like a bit of, maybe they lost their way a bit. They did an adaptation, and they picked up a script that they didn't write themselves originally. And in both cases, I thought there were some funny results, but people didn't really care for them. And then No Country. The boys are back in town. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, the boys are always back in town. This is peak Coen Brothers.
Yeah.
I think as peak as it gets, to be honest with you. It's one of those wonderful Oscar darlings that was also made a shit ton of money. It was a budget of $25 million, and it made box office $172 million in its initial run.
And incidentally, I think you'd agree, one of the only times that the Oscars pick for Best Picture is defensible and will be defensible forever.
Yeah.
Like it was the correct pick, so to speak.
I think so.
And there are years where there is no one correct pick, but in this case, you didn't pick wrong. And I think that makes it like one of the greatest confluences in film history. I don't think that ever happens.
It doesn't happen that often.
Best Picture is a great movie that's entertaining and makes a bunch of money. It's just rare.
Yeah. And it also has like themes that are like, I'd say the theme in this one is fairly easy to grasp. There's a lot of higher, some people might say a little too dense the way they go about it, but ultimately like what it's talking about is not that hard for any person to grasp. It's a pretty basic concept, and those sometimes are the best thoughts, I think.
So should we explain that we're breaking format, or I guess we have to, since I mentioned it.
I don't care too much, but yeah, might as well.
Well, the movie would have, we're trying to mirror what the movie did. The movie would have just broken format at the end, and you would have had to think back and go, they didn't examine it through 3 spectra. What the fuck show is this? But usually we examine the films of the Coen Brothers, through 3 spectra, diegesis, pedagogy, and howdy do that. But this time, much like the film we're going to cover, we've decided to break our own structure, cast it aside into the Rio Grande, into brackish water to be found later by Woody Harrelson. Meaning that we're just going to go through the film from beginning to end because we realize that the plot is so straightforward in No Country and the themes so present in every plot beat, but also in the way the film is executed. It evinces its themes so thoroughly that you really can't separate anything. So we're really just sort of going to go in chronological order. What happens in the film, because there's not a lot. There's not a ton of plot beats. Yeah. And, hey, what did that mean? So, Abe, I think you made probably more like robust diegesis notes.
I did.
Okay, well,
let's just start with a short...
I teed it up, buddy. You get your...
All right. I'll do an opener. So the movie's about a rural Texas, a guy who's a welder and a hunter named Llewellyn Moss, is played by Josh Brolin. He finds the remains of... Josh Brolin. He finds the remains of several drug runners who have all killed each other in like an exchange of some kind. And rather than report it to the police, he decides to take the $2 million that he finds on one of them. This puts a killer who's a psychopath, Anton Chigurh, who's played by Javier Bardem, on his trail, and he just massacres everyone he finds almost until he finds Josh Brolin. So the movie's basically that, just a big chase sequence.
Yeah.
But it just takes breaks because people get hurt and stuff like that. So Moss tries to stay one step ahead. So the other aspect of the movie is that there's Sheriff Ed Tom Bell, who's Tommy Lee Jones, who kind of oversees the investigation and he's looking into the crimes from the aftermath and just trying to see what's going on. So that's basically what the movie's about. But we can start with frame one because it kicks ass from the start to the finish. The first thing that we see is just shots of the country, shots of rural Texas, over this Tommy Lee Jones narration, talking about how lawmen didn't wear guns back in the old day. He likes to tell these several times in the movie. He tells a story about like a particular crime or a particular deviant who does something, and in this case, it's a story about someone getting put in the electric chair. And he said, I love the quote, he said he was going to hell, be there in 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
The other line that we see is okay, I'll be part of this world. Do you want to explain what you took from that?
Sure. I also want to say, since we're going in chronological thought order, this is available on Netflix now, streaming for free if you somehow haven't seen it. And the thumbnail is of Tommy Lee Jones. It should be of Javier Bardem. Do you agree with that?
What? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the most compelling.
If you're only going to pick one face to brand it, it's Bardem. But
Netflix does it because they're like, who's the bigger actor on our platform?
True. The monologue is not un-Lebowski-ish. So just on a diegesis level, I think, and I won't stay on this level long because I think the richest stuff in No Country is the philosophical stuff. But it's interesting. It's been very interesting to me to imagine the Coens, which I've never done before, as human men, like as people, who may also panic about their career, so that has, going chronologically, has put some of that in context. And I do see traces of ways in which they are trying consciously to return to their roots, and yet it's still an adaptation. It's a Cormac McCarthy book. Very interesting to me how various elements of the film, though, could be described as Fargo meets The Big Lebowski, which are their two most undisputedly great films prior to this.
Right.
I see the connection, but on to the philosophy. The quote I think you referenced, I wrote it, so I may as well give it. The crime you see today, it's hard to even take its measure. I just remember he says measure. It's not that I'm afraid of it. I always knew you had to be willing to die to even do this job. I'm going to stop that now. But I don't want to push my chips. No, it's even worse to say cowboy stuff without a cowboy voice. I don't know which to do.
I agree with
All right.
Keep the cowboy
I don't
in.
want to push my chips forward and go out and meet something I don't understand. Man would have to put his soul at hazard. A man would have to say, okay, I'll be part of this world. And I wrote in all caps immediately after that, and maybe it's too early to get to this because I think this is one of my more pertinent questions. I think what I take from it, and because I've seen the film before, is that there will be a repeated motif of how the past was objectively safer than the present is, and that with things like the drug trafficking on the border and cartels and things, the present is somehow more violent and insane than the past used to be. And having just covered Bone Tomahawk, oh my God, Bone Tomahawk on one of our other podcasts, the past is just as fucked up. And I wanted to ask you, because what I got from it is a question to throw back at you, my friend. Is the philosophy of this film flawed because of Cormac McCarthy being a grumpy old man who thinks the past was better than it is, which is very common psychologically?
That's a great question. I think my personal view is that it's both, and they're not mutually exclusive, and you can be wise and a dumb, outdated old man at the same time. I think that what this movie and how it's different is that it's talking about a very specific thing that's all entirely in the name of the film, because it's No Country for Old Men, which comes from a a poem called Sailing to Byzantium. And it's like, so you have this sheriff who's pondering his life after he leaves his life as a lawman, right? It's like his last thing. And one of the last parts of the poem is, it's whatever is begotten, born, and dies, caught in that central music, all neglect, which is referencing like people who are young and in their like moment, in their prime, so to speak. And what they neglect is the, quote, monuments of unaging intellect. That's why there's no country for old men. So monuments of unaging intellect, I think it's different in that when you have to ask the question, was more dangerous now or was it more dangerous then? You have to think about who's telling the story and from whose perspective. I think absolutely in the case of Tommy Lee Jones, he is one of those monuments of unaging intellect, but his intellect is becoming less and less relevant. And because of that, he doesn't know how to be a part of this world anymore. So it wasn't as dangerous. It just depended on your worldview. Now that the worldview's changed, he doesn't know how his worldview.
It's dangerous to him.
It's dangerous to him as opposed to dangerous
model of the world. Yeah.
In general, which I think is a good. It's good to specify those differences. Because,
and I do. Yeah. On this watch, I feel like for the first time I noticed some clues that. It's not the Woody Allen effect. Like, I originally thought Tommy Lee Jones was just speaking what Cormac McCarthy thinks without editorialization. But whether I haven't read the book, so I don't know whether Cormac McCarthy is self-aware or the Coens added it, but I do feel that there's visual stuff that sort of leads you to believe that they fully embrace nihilism. We finally said the word. In the sense that Cormac McCarthy knows that his worldview is also just based on his flawed perceptions. Like he grants that as well.
Yeah, I think it's
although it's just when you hear Tommy Lee Jones say stuff, it's like a Morgan Freeman. You're like, that must be right.
That must there's be. Gravitas here, and it's yeah. I think it depends on who, because I think that if you were to ask Anton Chigurh, he would say that the world is always equally evil and wrong because he is essentially, there's types of sugars all throughout time.
Sure, there's Splenda, there's cane sugar, there's...
Yeah, get that out of the way. But I think for Tommy Lee Jones, it's the sugars of the world that make him terrified about the new world because he has never seen that kind of thing. No, that would be unthinkable to act that way.
When I'm saying someone needs to sit him down and show him Bone Tomahawk.
Bone Tomahawk.
Or Bone even Tomahawk. Just a manifest of a slave ship that did the Middle Passage, like what the results of that were in terms of human cost.
Right.
You know, there's no good time. It's all bad.
All bad.
Speaking of all bad, we get Chigurh's first kill, right?
Well, yeah. So the end of that sequence, as he's saying, like, okay, I'll be a part of this world, Anton gets arrested, and we see his weapon, which is just a foreshadowing of how he goes about killing people. And so at this point in it, all we know is that it's some kind of pressurized, like, gun of some kind that has a tank, and that's all we know. And we're going to see it later. In the second sequence, I love how they do this, and I think it's an important part of how they show, like, violence in this movie is they do something that I don't think the Coen brothers have ever really done. In fact, I've seen it more often. Like, it's something that sometimes it happens in horror movies, definitely horror movies, but I've seen it a lot in, like, Get Out and Jordan Peele stuff. I saw it in Us as well, which is Anton slides out of his cuffs and strangles the deputy, but the way you see it is it's a normal single shot. You see the background of Anton Chigurh back on, like, against the wall doing that action while the cop is talking on the phone. So all of the so if you think of Anton as like a spider and everyone else as flies caught in his web, it's that haunting kind of like creeping up the spider will do right before the kill.
Yes, sir. I got it under control.
Yeah, it's totally a very effective way of showing like, oh no, he's there because he's out of focus. He's kind of looming over the event as opposed to being the subject of the event, which is important because of how, when you think about how going on forward, a lot of things that I'm going to mention is about how the Coen brothers utilize typical framing devices and shots of objects versus people and how they are similar and how they're different. But in this case, it's very much so like a nod towards like a very haunting action moment. So they aren't doing anything really poetic until after he strangles the deputy. That performance, by the way, is horrifying, right? Like his eyes bugging out.
Well, but it's also, I think, the shot most people remember because it's the louder shot, and is the, of course, top down scuff marks.
Yeah,
and the camera is spiraling slowly in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
it's a very loud shot. I noted this time
from the neck.
This happens at the 3-minute mark, and also I think made me realize something you just alluded to that I think it's important to remember throughout, which is look at how transparent they really decided to tone down. Like, this shot is one of the shots everyone remembers from this movie, and the reason is they pulled back so hard. Like, they're using basic film grammar in a very methodical, rich way, but they are like not really fucking with the camera much at all. And I know I compared it to Lebowski and Fargo, but I also think it feels blood simple. Like, it does feel like they went back to the basics of filmmaking, including look, man, Cormac McCarthy's book, it feels classic, it feels monolithic. What are just classic film grammar ways to build tension, where it's the opposite impulse of Michael Bay spinning the camera around.
Yeah, and you brought up nihilism. I think one of the most effective aspects of this sequence is after he kills him, after he makes him bleed from his handcuffs, and he like exhales, and then we jump cut to a sink, and he's like got bruises on, and he's cuts on his own right on his wrists as he cleans the blood out. When it cuts out of the bathroom, just to say like, and then he went and cleaned up. And then that's when we get the scuff marks shot, where we saw the scuff marks being kicked, but then we
hear the sound,
like, kind of tilts up and booms up, where it's actually just scuff marks and dead feet. And the shot of it is so still life. It's so like, it's like shot like a landscape, or like in a way it's like non-portrait, because that's why I think it smacks of nihilism to me, is it's like, oh yeah, and then he went into the restroom and cleaned up, and when he came back, that body is now just a part of the scenery. It means nothing. It's just an object, so to speak.
Right.
Just the remnants of the murder. And I think that is so haunting because it depersonalizes the crimes
I think
that he commits.
Two threads there too, because I think it's also building because Anton Chigurh, of course, becomes larger than life, and you want to think of him as like the Joker or somehow supernatural. And yet they go to great pains that, if you're paying attention at all, to show that he's just a human. The sequence of events works out this way, but he always suffers consequences of his actions. Even though you think he's like an unstoppable force, it's not true. And this is the first smallest example is, he strangled the guy. It also cut up his wrists. And this will escalate. This is a trend. Like, when he does things, you think, oh my God, he's like the boogeyman. But no, things happen to him. They just never kill him, at least in the duration of the film. And then, of course, I think what you're talking about is definitely builds immediately, because the next sequence is he tells a random human, hold still, please. Then kills them with a tool you use to kill cattle. And then it immediately cuts to Llewellyn killing a buck or a pronghorn or something, I couldn't actually tell, saying, hold still. And what I thought is most interesting is, of course, intentionally, because everything must be, arguably, well, I'm not arguing that pronghorn life is equal to human life, but if humans and animals and objects are all being equated through the nihilist lens, then Llewellyn had good intentions, but it doesn't matter. The pronghorn suffers greatly and he never finds it. And the dude, at least, is like dead instantly. And it just reminded me of the Ender's Game thing. If you've read Ender's Game, basically the core message I won't give away the twist because why spoil such an unrelated thing? But the core message of the twist in Ender's Game is it's crazy how you can have the best intentions and cause untold suffering, or be a sociopath and like do a real good job because it happened to benefit you as well.
Yeah, and then on top of all of this, I love the fact that, and this has probably been shown more than Coen Brothers, but obviously because they stuck pretty close to the source material.
Or you mean McCarthy then?
Oh, McCarthy. Sorry. I got Pinchon as Inherent Vice. My bad.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the novel. I haven't read the novel, but I did read that they like kept everything in more or less. Although they cut a lot of like dialogue and a lot of like they trimmed it down to fit into a movie, but they tried to keep the events the same. And I don't know if this is the same, but if it is, the fact that Moss shoots a buck and then he has to watch to catch it bleeding out. It's also on top of everything where it's just like, there's no rules to this game. It's murder for subsistence or for livelihood, for getting a hide, or I don't know what Moss is going to do with it. But the fact that there was like unnecessary violence and pain that came from the event, Moss doesn't really have anyone to like riff about it, but he just kind of admits that it's true. And we see that in the next sequence, because as the trail splits, I want to just point out, he's following the buck. The trail splits. He sees nothing on one side. He legitimately looks left. And then a limping black pit bull on the other. Which by the way, obviously from the drug.
I want to compare to the Hudsucker Proxy hula hoop shot, only in terms of they got a dog. I know you can do it with trainers, but it's still amazing because I know how, animal laws on film sets are. So there's a dog that's trained to like fake a limp, and then presumably when someone yells a signal from off camera, stops and like pensively looks back at camera and then goes again.
I think it could be two different dogs because they arrive in a truck. I think they just have black pit bulls, and that's why it's
But the dog acting in one of the binocular shots is
definitely
like,
hurt.
That's a good boy.
I mean, it's not only obviously putting tying together the two animals and the eventuality of what happens to Moss in the film, but it's like saying there's this animalistic kind of pain that we all like. I think what they're kind of trying to say is that Llewellyn Moss or Anton Chigurh are kind of like these black pit bulls. You're good at murder, trained at
Well, the buck presumably dies off camera.
Yeah, in fact, he specifically he doesn't go and get the buck because he follows.
It's gone. Yeah.
It's probably dying, but he just doesn't.
But I assume that's the other thing is because the twist. It bugged some people. Everyone came to terms with it quickly, but in theaters, I remember people going, "What the fuck?" when the movie ended out loud, and because your hero dies off screen. And in this watch through, I realized they try to warn you as many times as possible.
Yeah,
it's telegraphed very clearly.
That sometimes life doesn't paint this beautiful narrative where like you get the scene. Yeah, we'll talk about him specifically later and how they treat that, but you're absolutely right. The way that they're already trying to get us on that line of thinking is already happening.
We should have known.
The buck and the pit bull. Like any good film, you're like, it was screaming at us from the get-go.
Yeah.
It was screaming at us. And we chose not to listen because of normal conventions and the fact that we don't know where it's going necessarily.
We're like, well, there's a good guy with a gun and a bad guy with a gun. I can't wait for that big showdown. That's going to be fun. Yeah.
So it's going to be like, like guns are going to be involved, right? And yes, they are. So he stumbles upon, I assume by following the black pit bull, stumbles upon the drug dealer's shootout, finds a man asking for water, and he takes his automatic rifle. And he's like, ain't no lobos, because the guy's scared of getting eaten by wolves.
Hay lobos. There are wolves, yeah. There ain't no lobos.
I don't want to be, because he's probably a Catholic man, and he wants to be buried, and, whatever. And he doesn't want to be eaten by wolves. That would be a terrible death. And then I love he says, I figure I should head back the way I came in, which is, I want to unpack that. Do you think that means anything? Because obviously it's on the surface, I got to hide my tracks, so I should not be giving them a lot of different ways to, like,
I don't know why my mind here went here, but famously, it's also unclear whether he slept with the woman at the hotel. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason that's unclear is Cormac McCarthy intentionally wanted the frustration of, well, if he cheated on his wife, then in movie law, it's okay for him to die because that's why he died. He committed a sin and was punished. But if you don't know, it's like two Schrodinger's boxes connected to each other. It's like, well, who did he deserve to? Did he die? Well, you didn't get to see it. He's dead. Did he deserve to die? I don't know.
Right.
And so I think I was just thinking it's interesting. No, this is not interesting. This is just stupid. He's going out the way he came in. See, because he's going out due to the sin of interacting with a vagina, and he came into the world interacting with a vagina. Is that anything? Is that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think that's a stretch, only because there's no other like mother imagery
when you get birth,
or
it is a stretch, but
there's no birthing.
Bazinga!
All right. You need a timeout.
I bet people did not expect to hear the word bazinga in this episode of the Coen Brothers.
Bazonkers. Yeah. So I don't know. I just think
what do you get out of it?
I don't know. I just think that it's just a line that my filmmaker spidey sense just goes, oh, that means something. But the way he came into the story is aiming a rifle and killing something out of necessity. I guess that's his downfall. I don't know. That's the thing with this movie is there's no nihilism is no justice whatsoever because there's no system of justice. So when he throws a word like should, which implies a moral obligation to do something, it doesn't fuck with the morality of the situation. Like, should you not kill things? Is violence just beget violence? Is that all it's all about? And I don't think that's what the film really is talking about.
I think the other main through line is, and this is core existentialist thought as well, nihilism does not mean systems don't exist. It means they exist as much or as little as anything does, which is not at all. And that sounds like I'm saying the same thing, but it doesn't. It doesn't mean the same thing. What it actually means is you can make systems and endow them with meaning. When we all got together and agreed to produce shows by everyone showing up at this time and employing this system, that system has meaning because the system has function and produces meaning thereby. You are welcome to dissolve or lose faith in the meaning behind any system you created or others created at any time. That's what nihilist existentialism says. And I'll bring that up again when we get further along, but I think that's definitely one of the points. I think it's interesting when a character says should in this movie, can mean so much in the context of this movie. Because it really means it's what they think they should do, based
as opposed to what ought to happen.
Which structures in society they've accepted and which ones they think are bullshit and illusory at this time. Very interesting.
Yeah. So he grabs the money.
Yeah.
And by finding the last man standing by like two oak trees, and it's got a satchel of $2 million. Just a point of just a thing that I read that I was like, oh shit, look at that. Is the actual satchel that they use. Is the same exact satchel
my dad used to hit me with.
It was the same one used for the same purpose, although it was $1 million in that one for Fargo.
Oh.
It's the same prop. That's just a funny little, wow, trivia.
They wanted good luck on this one, man. They were like, we can't go out like this. We can't go out lady killers.
Right. So the next sequence is he returns home with the money for one of my favorites in medias res, like relationship sequences I've ever seen. He puts the guns in the house's foundation, and he talks to his wife. And her wife is played by Kelly MacDonald, and the character's name is Carla Jean Moss, and she becomes important later. But he can't
good
sleep.
Quotes all throughout.
Good quotes throughout.
What's in the satchel? It's full of money. Yeah, that'll be the day.
Yeah, that'll be the day.
Keep it up. Or you got it?
Yeah, it's like she goes, what'd you give for that thing? He says, you don't need to know everything, Carla Jean. Carla Jean says, I need to know that. He says, you keep running that mouth and I'm going to take you out in the back and screw you. And she goes, big talk. He's like, keep it up. And then she goes, fine, I don't want to know. I don't even want to know where you've been all day. And he says, that'll work.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's one of those things where it's clear that their rapport is like, they do love each other and they're like playing games. There is respect there, but the shit that they're saying to each other is like, fuck you. But they're also like, yeah, but fuck you. Love you. It's like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I get it. I do think I do think they both subscribe to a male dominant relationship model.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Like, I think it's true to them being a rural Texas couple, but you never get the feeling that he doesn't listen to her, he steamrolls her or anything like that. Yeah. But he likes to be the man and she's okay with that, but that's fine.
Yeah. I think in the end, they're both pretty satisfied with their life because I think one of the points of contention is that just like in Fargo, when it overreach, it's not like it's William H. Macy in Fargo because he's not attempting to overreach. He just finds a thing of money and thinks he can get away with it.
It's a simple
different
plan.
From concocting a plan that's like you're not prepared to organize and you just need the money because you think of yourself as a bigger man. He just came into some money and he's like, we could probably get away with this.
Yeah.
Now,
although also I think it mirrors him shooting the pronghorn.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it's funny that you were like hunting for, I don't know, subsistence or that's not true. Like he lives in an apartment and he works a job as a welder. Yeah. I imagine he's hunting for recreation, which I am not coming down against, but symbolically speaking, because he's hunting for recreation or even subsistence, but the buck gets away and bleeds to death alone, it probably gets eaten by scavengers, which isn't a total waste, but symbolically it's a waste of the violence, if you follow me. And you can tell that he's upset about it. He wishes he said keep still because he wants to get one clean shot to the heart. I feel like it raises the question, was it worth it? Or like, why'd you even, if you're sad, why'd you even go hunting if you don't like hunting? And with the $2 million, you find yourself asking Llewellyn a lot, I think. Did you need the $2 million? You seemed happy.
Right. You seemed happy.
Like before. This is way worse than before.
And in fact, Carla Jean seems happy as well until she figures out, like, you're doing this thing and you're not telling me about it out of some, like, because something's going on. And then when she learns what it is later, she's like, we don't need that. It's fine. Stop it. And he's just like, but then we'd be like so good and happy, right?
Right.
And I think that's the American dream creeping in where it's just like, yeah, but it would just make a lot of problems go away. But I think they're kind of both up to this point had a tacit agreement of, and I'll just be a ranger, I'll just be a welder and a vet, and like I'll bring in the money, and she'll be like, I'll do all the typical like American housewife at the time and the things that like we would get with a rural Texas marriage,
right?
But then she's like immediately like, you're fucking shit up. I don't need that. And no one ever explicitly says it this much, but this is the kind of vibe that you get because they don't seem unhappy, or like he just went out and stayed out late. And she gives him a little guff for it, but it's not like it's a systemic
they trust
problem
each other too.
Going out and drinking, or
but also like what is
ignoring it.
What is money if not the ultimate existentialist nihilist symbol? Because it's like you said, the American dream, but I think also meditate on the physical, like stacks of paper in a bag means so much right now only because everyone around him agrees that it does. A time will come in the future when that's just stacks of paper in a bag, but he put all his chips on the table for that system because of faith in that system.
So at this point, and I kind of want to talk about that from Moss's perspective now, because there's something that happens at the end of the sequence that is very telling of who he is. Because yes, he does not know about the transponder at this point, and later in the movie, in the bag, there's a transponder that allows Anton to find him who took the money. So as far as he's aware of it, I think he's about scot-free.
Right.
Like he does not need to go back, but he cannot sleep. So he fills up a water jug and returns to the crime scene because he's going to try to, if the guy who's asking for water is still alive, he still kind of feels bad. which is a nice little thing because it's not like the pronghorn where he's just like, they'll just die and it's too much trouble to go like put it out of his misery. He's like, I'm going to go and see if that guy, like I feel bad about making the choice of just leaving him because I was scared. I'm going to do the absolute worst thing I could ever possibly do, which is return to the crime scene and give this guy water. Just so that he at least...
Although it's funny you say that's the worst thing you could possibly do because, of course, a lot of good movies have mirroring.
Right.
Anton, the whole reason Tommy Lee Jones finally ends up at the same place at the same time as Anton or near, it's arguable. But the closest he ever gets to Anton is because he realizes he's talking to someone and goes, but this guy, obviously, because this happened later, he must have returned to the scene of the crime. Who would be so, like, have the brass balls to go immediately back to the scene of a crime they just committed? And he goes, of course, the guy we're hunting, because he's fucking nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. So what happens after that is a truck arrives, it sees Moss and chases him down. And so this is the Mexican cartel, clearly. They're, checking in of why none of their dudes have checked in because they've been dead for about 12 hours. And they see him, chase him toward I love that shot. I don't know. I don't even know if it's CG yet or anything.
Shooting the dog?
No. Chasing down. He's running away, kind of like North by Northwest. Yeah. And there's a thunderstorm, like
the lightning is amazing.
That must be CG because it's just too perfect of a moment. Because it's there and it's like perfectly continuity at it, and it's I don't know. It's something. If they got that actually. It's just like fucking A. That's Barton Fink level luck with the bird dropping into the water right at the end. It's just like, well, you might as well just be lucky then because you clearly just get lucky all the time.
Speaking of luck, this whole conversation's making me realize how lucky we are that, and knock on wood, I hope I am not the source, that like shitty MRAN cells have never latched on to Anton Chigurh, because they got the Joker... Anton Chigurh seems like it totally would have been an oversaturated Halloween costume, but not yet, and hopefully never.
I think it's because there's rage in other characters. He is so sterile. Chigurh is so sterile that it's hard to love him.
He's the Iceman,
because he just feels like the Grim Reaper.
He does, and yet again, I think the film constantly reminds us, and yet he is not literally the Grim Reaper.
Right.
Yeah.
But he likes to. I think he thinks he is. Though.
Are we at the gas station now? You don't want to skip?
I just want to finish. This is not symbology, but I just want to finish just so people know.
It slaps.
It slaps. It's a pretty impressive thing. Although trigger warning, a dog gets shot. He gets hit in the shoulder, and then falls down a ravine, jumps into the river to lose him. They send a pit bull after him. When he returns to shore, he takes out his gun. Disassembles it, blows through the barrel to make sure that there's no moisture where the contact is going to hit the pin. Takes out another bullet, rubs it down so there's no moisture on that, puts single bullet back in, cocks it, and at the last second as the dog's about to tear his
the dog is mid-air at his eye level. It
shoots the dog in the head.
Yeah, it's like the middle of the deadly jump.
One split second later, he's done. One miss, he's done. He took exactly the right amount of time to survive. Right. It's very cool.
It's what we used to say when we played GoldenEye. You got to take your time, but in a hurry.
Take your time in a hurry. That's right. That's what I was looking for. And then and then it cuts to him picking the buckshot out of his shoulder.
And I'm sorry, but you brought up the pattern, but it's so true. I didn't notice all the paralleling between Anton and him, and it's so obvious. I kick myself for not, but I think it's because the tension is so good in this film. You're just be forgiven to be like, I'm just in the story, man. I'm not looking at the shit.
Yeah.
But when you are watching it with a critical eye, it's not subtle.
He's picking buckshot from a soldier. It's not Anton who fired. Well,
he kills a dog, and then he kills a deer. It cuts to Anton Chigurh killing a human. He kills a dog. It cuts to Anton Chigurh killing a human. It's like Anton Chigurh thinks he treats women like objects, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
He really, really is a psychopath. So I also thought that it's funny. Another luck thing that happens to the fucking Coen brothers for some reason is that during this point in the movie, right around here, they had already gotten this stuff. his arm is fucked up the whole film. And as you read the trivia about, it was the same shoulder that Josh Brolin had like hurt off screen doing his life. Like I think he fell off
real.
like he fell off like a ATV or something like that. I don't know, just doing stuff. So he had a massive shoulder injury, but at the same time that his character also had one, so he doesn't have to use it in the film.
Right. But like any other kind of injury
so
would have cost us thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it's like, imagine you're a filmmaker, like you're the Coen brothers, you get a call, oh, Josh Brolin is really hurt.
Oh,
really?
Shit.
Fuck. Is that going to set
fuck.
us back? It's the same shoulder. It's the same shoulder. Yeah, you can do everything. You just can't use that shoulder. Well, our movie's about a guy
who
has a shoulder who can't use that shoulder anyway. So I guess, yeah, he's fine. We'll just take some painkillers.
Can we still be nihilists considering this is happening?
This is keeps like the world keeps gifting us random shit.
Yeah, Jim Caviezel just got struck by lightning while filming Passion of the Christ.
Right.
We might be wrong.
Yeah. One thing doesn't work out for them so much is that when they're doing, I think this sequence, or the sequence of like getting all the Mexican cartel stuff out in this area, that was shot in Malta, Texas, which is where they shot There Will Be Blood, and it's just a hilarious, and at the same exact the same time. It's just a little, like a few miles down the road.
Their crews would see each other, yeah.
They crews would see each other, and they didn't know what they're filming, but they knew, obviously they probably talked because they were like, all right, are you going to make sound or something like that? But they didn't talk too much because one day the Coen brothers came outside to shoot a sequence, and then all of a sudden, just huge plumes of oil burning clouds just loom over their area, because that was the sequence that Paul Thomas Anderson was shooting, where it was the explosions of the oil rig. So it's like, all right, so we have to cancel I bet like
no one sent a PA over to tell them. Yeah,
they had to give them money because you're like, you just fucked our shoot day. Or is that the kind of thing that, like, because they have nothing to do with each other.
I assume your people talk to my people, right? Right. The studios will work it out.
If you don't, and that happens, does that, like, do you just suck up that loss? Because that's what we have to do when we go out there and we're like, we did everything right, but for some reason there was like a big car crash and they shut down this location, and so we can't get to our parking lot or something like that. And it's just like one of those acts of God that you can do anything about. And so the studio just absorbs that money or that loss. I wonder if they were like hated each other after that, and it was like, well, I oughta. But anyway, that's just another random trivia that I thought was interesting to realize, that also another great film shooting literally in the exact place that year just happened to be right across the way, ruining each other's footage. Anyway, so yeah, then he arrives at the Texaco and he talks to the shopkeep, which I don't know how much you probably want to read some quotes from it, because I love how he aggressively talks to the cashier, like picking apart his language and his accent. And he's like asking threatening questions like, "That your house out there back?" He makes fun of him that he married into the job. Ever we're asked these questions, you'd be like, "Are you trying to murder me? Is this like a murder? Is this the preamble to a murder?"
Well, I think the best line is, he asks, "Is there something wrong with anything?" "Is that what you're asking me? Mm-hmm. Is there something wrong with anything?"
I like that too, because what's the most you ever lost in a coin toss? He flips a coin and says, "I didn't put anything up on it." And his response is, "Yes, you have. You've been putting up for it your whole life.
You've been putting it up your whole life."
Yeah.
Meaning betting it. I just think it's an important difference. Meaning you've been you've been betting it, not you've been putting up with it. Yeah.
Like there's this, I think Chigurh believes that he's this kind of force that tries to equalize. And if there's a birth, there's a death. And he just sees himself as the second part of that altercation or that interaction. So that's what he's saying, I think, with that line is, you've been putting up for it your whole life, meaning you've already purchased the deal. You're already in the contract. It's just whether or not you're going to lose a bet and finish that. Like,
I take it more as him saying that everyone alive could die at any moment.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. I think,
Yeah, there's no special protection, and therefore at any moment in life you're betting your whole life. And I sort of get the vibe from that scene that he kills that guy because he finds him pathetic, because he feels that in a world where you could die at any moment and you're betting your life at every second, you married into owning a gas station. But it's like, fuck you, Anton Chigurh. What if this guy gets his joy not from work, but from other things? You know? Right. So I still think Anton Chigurh's perceptions are flawed, but it's interesting to me that, and of course this is the beginning of the system, he puts faith in a system, which is this stupid coin system.
Right.
But he truly believes in it, because in this scene he says, call it, I can't call it for you, it wouldn't be fair. And I love how efficient that is. Those are the rules of his system. Like, we get it, that's the game. Right. And of course that's why he doesn't kill this guy, but he does scare the shit out of him just to make him, I don't know, suffer that day. And the other thing I really got from that scene was, do you remember the recent Joaquin Phoenix, what's it called? You Were Never Really Here.
Yes. Yeah, I saw it.
Him crushing the green jelly bean, which they used in the trailer and seems to be like an important shot from that film, didn't mean anything to me unless it's like, he's like a hammer. He crushes things, you know? Mm-hmm. I just wanted to compare that to, in this scene, it's so much better and more meaningful, and it's such a simple change. Anton Chigurh puts a crumpled up plastic wrapper of sunflower seeds on the counter, and they both stare at it as it silently unfolds, which gives you like this coiled snake imagery instead. That's like, it's building, it's going to get you. It's just amazing to me how similar the shot can be, and one, to me, is devoid of meaning unless it went over my head, and the other one is like, this is working so well. Hey gang, quick intermission here in an extra long episode of Coen Brothers to tell you about a chance for you to support the show while benefiting yourself greatly. We have partnered with what I am referring to as the Criterion collection of streaming services called Mubi.com, MUBI.com. And this is a service where film experts curate films for you 30 at a time on a 30-day rotating cycle. There's a new film added every day, and you can view the films on desktop, mobile, or tablets. And what's great about it is you don't spend time clicking around trying to pick, inundated with millions of options, and you're going to see a lot of great classic films that you know were vetted by a team of film buffs to be among some of the best films in the world. Abe, I know you got the page up. Can you list some of the movies they have available right this second?
Yeah, there's a lot of international films this month, notably a lot of French films. One that I wanted to point out in particular, which is Claire Denis. They have two of her films, Bastards and White Material, that just launched. And man, she's a great filmmaker, really good stuff. So you can see that stuff. I highly recommend that.
Great. Just list some titles, whether you've seen them or not, so people can get a feel.
Yeah, there's a bunch of other films too, because like you said, they had one a day. I saw Fugue, Sunset Edge, Fatima, Gloria, The Creeping Garden. A lot of really good stuff.
There you go. And this is just as of right now. What's really great about it is it changes constantly, and yet it's all killer, no filler. So log on. You can get a 30-day free trial and support the show. We do benefit, as do you, by going to Mubi.com/brothers. That's MUBI.com/brothers for a 30-day free trial and to show and to show your support for the beans.
Yeah, it's because it's all about the setup and the framework. Yeah. The framework being that this character thinks what they think. I think there's something powerful in when we're trying to remove the veil from Anton's eyes, in terms of like he's a really fucked up figure, and he's actually wrong about his methodology, because he believes that there's some kind of purchase power with a life, and he believes that I don't know if he believes I think he believes that the only purchase power is if you can get away with killing someone or not. And since he's a psychopath, he enjoys killing.
Right, because it's not like he flips a coin every time he shoots someone on the street.
Right.
He does what he needs to do. It's a weird fucking ritual.
Yeah.
Which I think is the point is, he says it with such confidence that you're like, well, maybe in this weird universe, he's right. I mean, the things he says seem to have the weight of like the film behind them. But there are clues that's like, no, everyone just operates in the reality they think is real, but they're all wrong. Like their pattern is always shown to be delusional or inconsistent at some point, even Anton.
Right. Yeah, and so all the previous wisdom you had may not be relevant in this new country. That's why it's not for old men. Got it.
Right.
So yeah, this is the only character I think that he doesn't. One of the only ones that he doesn't kill.
Yeah.
When he does that, because you can infer, or at least there's off-screen stuff, but almost everyone that he interacts with in the movie,
I was just say
dies.
Yeah, other than the kids at the end.
Other than the kids at the end, this Tex coworker, and I think the woman at the motel, who is another. Well, we're coming up to, and
he does shoot the clerk at the motel.
The woman who's like sassy, and he
kills her. I think. Let's keep going.
I don't think so. But okay, yes, let's keep going. So there's a sequence where Moss returns home, talks to his wife about his injuries. Anything there? I think that's just Moss realizing that Moss biding his time before he realizes that
he's honest with her, though. I think that's where
he's honest with her.
That's where we get the impression that they actually have a good relationship.
Yeah, because he actually comes to the fact of what's going on, and there's no real threat there. But he's like, I did get shot at. They could find my car.
Sends her to mother-in-law's house in Odessa.
Yeah. So next sequence is Anton meets some comrades and inspects the crime scene. Finds Moss's truck and takes the VIN number plate off the door, and then he gets a receiver from the comrades, and then shoots them in the head.
The money has a tracker in it.
Yeah, it has a tracker. Yeah,
and he has the receiver. So
now it beeps. Now we have the system where it will beep more rapidly at the closer he gets to the actual satchel, because in the money there's a transponder.
Yeah, we didn't actually mention the year is 1980, so it's like a big fatty, like you'd have a cell phone in a briefcase. Mm-hmm. It's a big fatty transponder with one dot on it, and it beeps more when you get closer.
Right.
Here's my thing. I don't understand why he shoots these guys in the head.
I think that he kind of finds it an insult, or maybe he's just, once again, a psychopath who likes killing. Yeah. He doesn't do the coin trick. He just kills them. We don't get...
And clearly they were...
He doesn't say, I killed those guys because they didn't deserve a coin toss because they're already evil. Or, I like to kill them, that's why I killed them. Or, this is clearly... they're not helping and they'll get in my way, so it'll just be easier if I kill them. But it does cause later a lot of problems for Anton Chigurh.
Well, spoiler alert, I want not all the details, but the reason this is confusing to me is he will later claim, and eventually he just becomes a rogue agent who has decided to keep the money and fuck off and kill whoever stands in his way. But he claims that the reason is because they offended him by hiring other people to go on the job as well. And my point is, we know that he doesn't know that yet because we see when he learns that. So why does he kill these two guys? But as Woody Harrelson will later say, sometimes he will just kill people because they did something that he thinks is a breach of etiquette, but you wouldn't know. You know, like you wouldn't necessarily know what you did wrong.
I think I think he does know. I think that we can assume that it's atypical for him to be working with these two guys, that's all Stephen Root saying, like, we're going to get Anton there and my guy's there. And then they'll figure it out, and they can liaise. And
so maybe that's the moment where he decides he's keeping the money. I don't know.
And then Woody Harrelson is sent as like a cleanup crew,
right?
Root as well.
But also Stephen Root will refer to him as he's gone rogue. So the thing I picked up this time, which I didn't on previous viewings, is I'm pretty sure Anton, after a certain point, is like, yeah, fuck my employers, I'm going to keep the money. And so in another way, he's similar to Llewellyn. For a guy who seems dead inside with no heart, a lot of money tempted him. So like there's some kind of feeling in there. Greed is a feeling, you know. Mm-hmm. He believes in some kind of... I wonder what happy life Anton Chigurh dreams of having with $2 million.
Yeah, I don't know.
What could he do
to
enjoy life?
What would he do?
Right, yeah.
We don't know anything about this guy, which maybe is...
What are his hobbies?
Which we can't answer. The next sequence is we finally get Tommy Lee Jones in the flesh this time. He leaves his home, briefly talking to his wife, packs up the horse trailer, drives to the burned car of the road, which is the car that we saw Anton Chigurh like kill the guy when he was acting like a cop car.
Yep.
So he ditched the cop. Yeah. So he just keeps accumulating cars and burning them.
Yes.
Because it's clear that he jumped from the police car, took this guy's car, which none of us saw, and then at some point found another car, killed probably another person to get that car, and burned that car. So he's just constantly just jumping cars.
His dim-witted deputy, played by the phenomenal Garrett Delahunt, kindly comes up and participates in a reenactment of the relationship between the cops and Fargo.
I actually don't, but I actually think that Wendell
is smarter than Francis's
Garrett
deputy.
Delahunt
That's
does not
for
have
sure,
a buffoonery. He is kind of a little bit like
dopey.
I don't know. But they're both inferring very good, like they're doing tracking and inferring very interesting things out of just being at a crime scene within seconds.
Wendell is a good detective, but he's still dopey. Like his personality.
Yeah, he makes jokes,
invites
and
ridicule,
does bits. Yeah, their interaction is
and
fun
things
to watch,
that Bell says often go over his head, which is funny because then he'll immediately go, "But I put these two things together, so they're probably here." And you're like, "Good job, Wendell. Good detective work." Yeah. It's very linear, Sheriff. Well, age will flatten a man out, Wendell. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we kind of jump ahead, and they
find Llewellyn's truck. Scene, yep.
And they inspect the bodies, and that's where they really know. Like I thought that it's obvious that from one look that it was like, okay, so this is like a cartel thing gone bad, but they get and then two people came, and then they got shot.
Yeah.
So they're looking at fresher bodies versus decomposing bodies. They're looking at foot tracks, and they know that someone was there and left, and there's probably another person there earlier who left.
Yeah.
They are inferring it through a lot of different a skill set that is impressive, frankly impressive.
Although at the same time, this is one of the times I realized they are kind of hearkening back to not everything about the good old days is necessarily good. Like change can be good, because this is also where he's like, why do you suppose their bodies aren't et, Sheriff? Supposedly a coyote won't eat a Mexican. And you're like, all right, Tommy Lee Jones.
All right.
Jeez, man.
There's this back and forth between Wendell and Bell that is pretty good. There might not have been no money. Bell says, that's possible. But you don't believe it? No, probably I don't.
Yeah.
Well, it's a mess, ain't it, Sheriff? If it ain't, it'll do till the mess gets here. I just think that's
in the
very
trailer,
Coen-esque.
Yeah.
But I also just love the way of, you don't believe it? No, probably I don't.
Yeah.
Which is another way of saying
unlikely,
it's another way of him
possible,
saying I'm keeping clear eyes. You know, I'm keeping clear eyes when I look at things. But there's something in me that's telling me it might. There probably was money, but something's weird. So I don't think there wasn't money. Yeah. So I think that's something that goes back into just what you said about No Country. There probably is a score, because no one would do this horrible thing unless there's money involved. But the reality is that is true. But also there's this other guy, Anton, who does kill for things that aren't necessarily money. Yeah. And that's why he says probably I don't, is he's fearful of there's this new brand of killer that I've heard about that makes no sense to me. And I really hope that isn't involved. But it might be, it might not. Yeah. But it's just a good way. Probably I don't is a great way of saying that. I'm unsure of everything, but I have I'm starting to not trust my impulses and my usual kind of thoughts on this, but because they're becoming wrong, but I still have them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then there's a sequence of basically detectives chasing detectives, because Anton is also a detective. It's because you get him going to Llewellyn's apartment, and without speaking, you can tell he knows, he gathers enough information to know where to go next. And of course, the sheriff and deputy will also come here following Anton and figure out where to go next. And it's interesting how for the rest of the movie, the sheriff's plot is essentially, he has a case, he's always one step behind, the case wraps up, and he never solved it.
Yeah, I love the bit about him taking going to the fridge and getting milk.
Yeah.
Because it gives in the later scene when Bell / Tommy Lee Jones finds the milk and notices that it's got moisture, that clearly someone was here before them
He goes, well, that's frustrating, ain't it? What? The milk's still sweating. We just missed him. Oh, Sheriff, we got to circulate this. What do we circulate, Wendell? Seeking a man who has recently drunk milk? Oh, Sheriff, that is aggravating. Well, I'm ahead of you there.
What do you think of them both looking into the TV and the camera showing a reflection of them? The shot is mimicked twice, once with Anton and once with Belle. What do you think that means? Is it just Belle sitting in and saying, like, this man probably drank milk, and if I was here, I would be able to see the reflection of that man and knew who that man was? Or does it have any other, like,
You were talking about the sassy lady now at the trailer park receptionist. He doesn't kill her. He kills the receptionist at the hotel later, though. Mm-hmm. Just indiscriminately off camera, which is another
there's
clue.
Only like 3 or 4 people he doesn't kill.
But yeah, she's too sassy to kill. She's also the exact kind of woman that the Coen brothers love to put in a bit part exactly like this. She's so Coen brothers. I wonder if she was in the book or they were like, let us do one of our little things here. I wrote amazing shot next to it. Like the TV shots, again, they're so transparent that when they even slightly do anything with style or like artistic voice coming through, you immediately snap to attention and go, well, this is something. And the TV shot, especially with the repetition, you're like, well, that's something. And I was thinking that it's funny that we recently covered Synecdoche, New York, because I also think existentialism is about your relationship with the reality as you build it, and simulacra, to use the Synecdoche lingo, and how our simulacra interact with other people's simulacra, and the simulacra we've built of what we think society is and cultural norms are, even though you can never have enough input to have an exactly average understanding of what everyone else thinks. So I just think, as dumb as it sounds, because, like, I don't know, it's a reflection, and that's dumb, but it is a little spicier when you consider it's a reflection specifically on a TV, which is also the tube that's in our house that feeds us all of the information we use to build our perception of the world.
Oh, that's interesting.
Like, it's the only reference in this movie I can find to media. And I feel like almost they wanted to mention TV and film because they're acutely aware of their part in shaping what a healthy swath of people think the world is like, you know?
Yeah, and yeah.
Their movies are part of that.
They themselves are archetypes. There might be something there. I don't know.
Did you have a take as well?
I didn't have anything else other than just like having that moment where
it's beautiful.
Looks at something going, there was a horrible monster here, and I'm occupying their same space, drinking their milk, looking at the same thing they looked.
Do you think
I knew what they looked like so I could kill them?
Do you think Wendell leaning down to look at the circular mark left by the lock from when Anton broke into Llewellyn's trailer on the wood paneling is a reference to when the biker from hell looks at the word fart in Raising Arizona?
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. It's true that we both have 2 different home invasions for information.
Yeah.
No, but yes, in that they both serve the same purpose of, like, they're both there to understand what's going on at this area. I think with the biker, it's more of just he's taken by surprise that he sees the word fart.
Sure.
But he wasn't like looking at the wall to be like, is there a clue here?
Is there a clue?
Whereas,
fart.
Bella's clearly going like, well,
but yeah,
this is a foreshadowing of like some kind of device that he uses to get into houses, and we already have seen it. So yeah.
But it is funny how the structural twists at the end almost seem even more shocking because of how they embrace traditional film grammar so hard through most of the movie. So shots like the TV shot definitely stand out,
They stand out because we linger on them as well, so that begs the question. The next sequence is Moss checking into a motel. He looks for the lowest rate room, scopes out the place, and puts a satchel in the ceiling vent, which I thought was pretty clever because he pushes it all the way to the edge.
Right.
Which would be hard to see. But of course,
but not impossible.
Everyone's super intelligent in this movie.
Everything we do leaves a trail is one of the other messages.
It doesn't matter how smart you are. If someone's hot on your trail and really good at like this kind of job, they're gonna catch you.
And I think also that goes hand in hand in the existentialist sense. Yes, we're all connected because we exist within a closed system. Yes, everything you do won't definitely, but has the chance to affect something or someone around you profoundly in ways that are entirely unpredictable, welcome to life. That's why nihilism.
Right. So Anton looks at the phone call, like after getting the from his house after getting his phone bill. We get a sequence where he calls a woman, which is Moss's mother-in-law. We don't know that yet, but because he gets no information from her, 'cause she's like, "Why would he be here?" kind of thing. But obviously, if you look at, I actually stopped. If you look at the calls, there's several calls by that, and they're also the longest calls, so you can infer that Anton was like, "Here's a person who's close to them," because they talk for like 30 minutes every now and then. But obviously, that was Carla Jean. That wasn't him.
Anton also shoots at a raven and misses, which I think is another clue of like, he's like the Grim Reaper, but he's not still a human. He can miss.
He can miss, and he
just keeps driving. He doesn't give a fuck.
Killer, so he does. He does hit. That's what's going on with Anton as well. Moss goes to his clothing store to get socks for his foot wound, which is just one of those. Because we come to the same clothing store later at the end of the film. And it's just one of those nice things that I understand that it was probably already in the book, but also perfectly Coen Brothers-esque, because it's just like, why would... He needs clothes twice in the movie. Might as well make it the same clothing store. Why? Is it a joke? There's no joke. It's just one of those things where it's just like...
Yeah, although they do add the second time, maybe I think the only joke in the film. The only thing that is a joke. He comes into the clothing store completely naked, I think, except for his boots.
Oh, he's got a medical gown.
Oh, yeah, medical gown and boots. And the guy's like, how are those boots holding up? Because he bought them at the store. Pretty good. Well, can I help you? And he asks, just because the guy seems so calm, is it regular for someone to come in to your store completely naked? And he goes, no. This is the first time, or I forget what he says. Like, nope, it's pretty unusual. But he still like is calm. He just refuses to
one
acknowledge.
Of those things, it's like a joke. Yeah, it's like just we have to peel back and look at the strangeness of this event.
I really doubt that dialogue sequence is from the book verbatim.
It's from the book,
but maybe
it seems like
it feels so Coen-y,
just like a playful. It's not even a joke as much as just.
But while he's there,
comic relief.
Unless I'm wrong, correct me. He also buys a shotgun. And saws it off.
That happens later because I want to throw in one thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Because he returns to the hotel that night to find someone scoping out his place, and he realizes that one of the a truck very like the one that he was, if not the same, that shot him with the buckshot earlier in the film, is now at the place. So they're somehow tracking him, and he doesn't understand that, but he pays the cabbie extra to take him to another motel. So he's going to stay at another motel that night, but he's going to come back to the previous motel because he has to get the money, but he's going to do it in a clever way, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
But then Anton is
the clever way is,
he shoots the crow.
He buys a second room that's adjacent that he knows the vent attaches to, and then he tries to yank the thing through the vent from the opposite side. At the same time, Anton is arriving.
Then Moss goes and buys the shotgun. And he also
makes a grabber so he can retrieve the money.
He grabs the money. It shares the wall, which is kind of clever because all he had to do is go to the. He's like, "What's the opposite of that? The one I just got?" Because he knows they share a vent. So that's pretty clever, but doesn't matter because Anton hears a receiver beep while he's driving through, so he knows he's getting close to the satchel. And so now we're back at the Regal Motel, and it's intercut with Moss building a pole to grab the money and stuff like that.
And it doesn't matter because Anton has a magic shotgun that can fire hugely powerful shotgun blasts with no buckshot recoil. The buckshot can be blocked from recoiling by a shower curtain, and it's absolutely silent. It sounds like pew, like a mouse sneezing. It's amazing.
Yeah. Silent shotgun. So he does this typical thing of using pressure-based instruments.
Well, and of course, the Coens are doing their usual thing of let's find a way to do it different, because in the sound design in this sequence, footsteps are louder than the gunshots.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because they're more important to the tension, you know?
The sound in this movie is stellar. It's so... Watch it and think about it if you have any interest in it, because it's one of those things that it doesn't matter to you because as long as you don't notice it, it's doing a good job. but the sound in this is very hypersensitive. Like anytime we see dead bodies, we see flies in the camera because they like release flies and stuff like that, and you hear every single one of those flies. Like,
and of course, there's no
so
score
visceral.
anywhere. Yeah,
yeah, and I think it really adds to, like, why I think they do that. Why it's important is it really adds to the fact that once again we don't have a very much score at all.
Right.
And
how can we make sound still pull its weight?
The landscapes need to be interesting, but also it's very off-putting and very chilling to have your normally quiet areas be very loud, like the wind is loud and stuff like that.
Right. I think they also just want to find a way to use the sound space. If you're not going to use score, don't do nothing, you know.
So that when you take it away, it really feels scary. Like
make there be a reason that it's not just you couldn't afford the rights to score. But it just blows my mind how the sound design in a well-edited sequence is also a system that has no inherent meaning that you build the rules to.
It's another
present. You expect suspension of disbelief or faith in that system, and then you give a cue, and everyone's allowed to dissolve the system, and it doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Amazing.
It's another tool in your toolbox. And
it mirrors the themes of the film, yeah.
Right. So when he gets to the vent, they do this twice in this movie, by the way, is they kind of give you the red herring.
You think it's the standoff because
Anton's going to come in and he's going to kill him because we don't have.
Or they're
going to
fight. Yeah.
And so Anton goes to the original apartment, which is now filled with the Mexican cartel people. He kills them, but then then I love how like this is the kind of stuff that I know what you mean when you talk about like MRAs adopting like the Joker and stuff. Like he does very like peculiar, cool stuff. Like he takes off his shoes so he can be silent. He's doing a lot of like really smart things that when you first witness them, you go, "What the fuck is he doing?" And then when you see him in action, you go, "That's why he took off his shoes and socks so that he wouldn't make a sound and stuff like that." I think that stuff's kind of cool, and I can see why you can make someone like Anton Chigurh seem awesome when in reality it's a cool, very effective thing that he did, but like let's not get excited about the character.
And this is of course when he realizes and we also realize that the reason like you almost thought Anton had caught up with him before, so you're confused for a second because Anton's catching up with him twice, and then you realize, oh no, those are the cartel guys. They also were given a transponder. So Anton now knows that the mysterious organization, we don't care, that Stephen Root represents that is running all this, cares about the $2 million enough and trusts Anton little enough that they have multiple groups working on it. They gave transponders out to multiple groups because they just want whoever gets Llewellyn to get Llewellyn.
They want the money, yeah.
Well, it turns out this, again, you hardly could have predicted this. Like, I get his logic, but it's very tenuous. For some reason, this is deeply insulting to Anton. Now everyone must die. This is the moment where he decides that, yeah.
And you mentioned it before. I love how they show Anton noticing the scratches inside the vent, and then later when the money's gone, like he can see all of the remnant, kind of like the shoe scuffs on the ground in the wake of the aftermath of the murder of the deputy.
Or the burned out cars, or the symbol of the lock that always ends up on the opposite wall of any room.
And
Anton
it's also just a beautiful shot because you have to. It was probably tricky to light because you have to backlight the scratches so you can see the emulsion of the stainless steel dip and have like a bevel to it, and it's like hard to get that very nuance, but it totally, as soon as you see it, you go, oh, someone had something heavy in there and yanked it out, and it scratched the base of the vent. And that's just like a very hard thing to. Sometimes you write that in a screenplay and then you go like, how are we going to accomplish that? It's not like it's an effect. It's just
it's really obvious. It's not hard
really
to
obvious.
follow.
Very, very good. Very good insert.
Then a magical old black man, the only black person in the movie, says one line that, of course, is like a spooky premonition. He says, my name may be Bagger Vance, but no, he says, you should not hitchhike. Hitchhiking is dangerous, which, of course, is just telling him, you had a life. You're trying to hitch a ride on this story that didn't involve you, that's way bigger than you. You're going to get smashed, man. And of course he does.
Yeah. And if you guys don't already know of it, it's kind of one of those scenes that is just about the word sonder, which I won't define, but just look it up, Sonder, and that's exactly what they're talking about here. The next sequence is Root and Harrelson meeting. So
introduces Woody Harrelson,
whose name is Wells in the movie, and
so we have two Mr. W's in this movie.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Garrett Delahunt, famously Mr. W on Deadwood.
Oh yeah. Francis Walcott. So presumably Root is behind the deal with the Mexicans, and Anton has gone rogue. This is
okay.
Now
I'm going to stop you just for a second because
context.
Before we move on, just to jump back on, my mind is blown on how effective and fresh and yet simple it is to fade to a shot that's already panning up the side of a building with the sound really loud in the mix of an elevator going ding, 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 ding.
Mm-hmm.
You know that there's someone in an elevator we care about, even though the shot does not include any image of an elevator. It's a shot of a building and it's just panning up. Like the synesthesia of it all. It reminded me very much of how effective the Barton Fink fade from New York to LA is, this is also a fade where it's like fade to and sequence of shots that express a guy's going up in an elevator, but in a combination you've never seen that exact combination before. It's nothing, but it's everything. All right, please continue.
Yeah, it's nothing and it's everything.
It's just like in Hot Fuzz, him switching from one office to another. That little montage. It's nothing, but it's everything. Yeah.
Right. So the story with these characters is just we get kind of validation if you're ahead of the curve, or it's the first time you really pieced it together that Anton is going rogue, because not a lot of conversations have been had about it. It's mostly just being inferred. And I love and so he's hiring so Stephen Root, who doesn't have a name in the movie, is just the man who hires Wells, and Wells, who's Woody Harrelson, is going to murder Anton Chigurh because he's gone rogue. Oh, I counted the floors of this building from the street, and one's missing. An attempt at humor, I see. What do you think that was?
I think that Woody's character is probably unfamiliar with the tradition people have of omitting the 13th floor.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I thought it was a reference yet again to his expectation of reality is that a bunch of grown adults who build a building would just label the floors in order. Stephen Root's expectation of reality is that must be a joke, because how could you be a full-grown man and not know the 13th floor thing? And even if you don't know, why would you think that's important enough to bring up? It's just showing that they're operating from different sets of reality. Like also,
I agree.
Their understanding about Anton is interesting because you can tell that Woody fears him, and yet he still takes the job because he's like, well, even, he is kind of like the Grim Reaper. Like, he doesn't dumb down how scary Anton is, but he's like, but if I catch him sleeping and shoot him in the head, he would die. That's sort of where he's at with it.
And he's like, the way the world works, as far as I am concerned, is I can kill this man.
Right.
So
this is the midpoint time-wise. I just like to point that out sometimes.
Oh, yeah. So Moss checks into a new hotel and gives the attendant money to call him if any men check into the hotel that night. And for the second time in the movie, he's plagued by thoughts of how they found him, so he wakes up and he doesn't go to bed. He checks the satchel, and now we finally get the transponder
reveal
is in there. And he's like, fuck.
Well, we knew, but Llewellyn knows now.
So he noticed the beeps getting more rapid, and he calls the front desk, no answer, which is a clear indication that it's happening right now. Something is happening right now.
Because she said, I'll be here, or something like that.
I'll call you. Yeah. He says, here's a bunch of money, because he has a lot of money.
And he says, call me if any swinging dick enters the hotel.
It actually says any swinging dick, but, it's Texas. So he knows that he immediately gets paranoid, and he gets a shotgun, and Anton dims the hallway lights, first off, and then he also walks by, because he walked by to dim the lights, because Anton already is 2 steps ahead. He knows that it's very possible that Moss can see his shadow underneath the door. Anton.
But I will say I don't know why he didn't take the initiative and fire through the door immediately.
Because I don't think Moss is the kind of thing a guy who just assumes.
He thought, what if it's a bellboy? Right. What if I accidentally kill a bellboy?
Anton is the predator.
Whereas Anton would be like, yes, kill the bellboy. That doesn't matter.
Maybe I can just wait him out, and if I don't shoot, this won't happen.
He won't shoot, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're a prey animal and you decide, should I hide here or should I run? It's that kind of
or
thing.
am I truly cornered and it's time to fight? But
I don't know what he knows. I don't know
and then
if
of
he
course,
knows exactly where I am or if,
An epic nighttime streets of Texas gunfight ensues. That is every inch as badass as Albert Finney with a cigar and a Tommy gun in Miller's Crossing. It's
you thought I wrote that down too because you thought of the same thing because when so Anton blasts the door open, the lock, and then Moss fires at the door, but he's like now he's bleeding terribly.
Yeah,
and he jumps out the window but returns to the front of the house, which is exactly like Miller's Crossing with Albert Finney. So they do the same action, which is always just like a thing a clever person would do. Is just like rather than jump down and run away, when they come out and they look and they see you off in the distance running in a direction. Now now the chase is completely altered. I think Moss thinks that he can get the upper hand by if I return around, maybe he'll think I went out the window, or maybe I can catch him at the stairs, not assuming that he's going to see me and I can take him out. That's a very high level functionary
and to get across in a film where no one speaks. Yeah, you have to figure out that's what they're. It's a lot of process.
Love until they're at the car, we don't see Anton in the sequence, just ricocheted fire. Because he's running down the quiet street, a car approaches and Moss gets in. The driver
gets in a truck and says
all this stuff. It's just like Anton is anywhere. Anton is in the wall.
Well, he gets in a guy's truck and says, basically, I'm commandeering this vehicle. And then the guy gets sniped in the head, so you're like, I guess Anton has a sniper rifle and a good position somehow right now on this truck.
Moss freaks out and drives the truck from the passenger side, which of course never works out. Because it always you're gonna crash. He gets out and gets behind another parked car, seeing Anton's approach in a storefront window reflection, which is great. Just one of those plays of light that Roger Deakins is very well known for. He did it in Skyfall a bunch of times with a bunch of mirror, people looking up at people and using mirrors to see where they are. I mean, even Saving Private Ryan had that time where Tom Hanks takes out the little piece of glass. But so he does that whole trick, and then Anton walks up, noticing the blood trail to right before Moss shoots at him, so he can perfectly dodge it more or less, or at least we think he does. And then Anton ducks behind a car. Moss follows, but Anton has escaped down the alleyway. And obviously, the noticing the blood trail, giving him that second to dodge the bullet, more or less, is reminiscent of the pronghorn. So, there's that.
And it's also interesting that Anton Chigurh is so emotionless that he's also a perfect strategist in the sense that he gets hit once and he leaves. He decides the conditions of the fight have shifted in a way I don't like. I'll just fight him again later. Which a person less in control of their emotions, of course, would not be able to do. But so Anton leaves, and Llewellyn's like, well, at least I'm alive. He walks across the border into Mexico or out of Mexico. Okay.
He's in Mexico as these college kids are leaving Mexico.
Sees 3 basically frat bros who treat him like shit, even though he's obviously injured, because he needs a coat, and they demand money and more money, and he asks for a beer, and they say, how much will you give us? Which is, of course, important later, because even though it's a lie, they don't know it. They say, were you in a car accident? And he goes, yeah, I was in a car accident. And he asks for clothes, and they charge him, and they treat him like shit. At the end of the movie, Anton will really be in a car accident, and the random people who happen to encounter him will be so wonderful. Nice and like good Samaritans to him. And you never know who you're talking to. I think it's just you never know who you're talking to.
If the assholes are the college students in Mexico versus the younger teenage kids in suburban America.
Oh, I don't know if I don't think.
I think it has more to deal with just random kids or random people or where you are in your life.
I just think it's playing the opposites to show that karma holds no sway here.
Yes,
the guy whose intention is good on the inside met some assholes because nihilism. Yeah. The guy who deserves to get caught by the police met some nice people who didn't scope him as evil because who that could happen.
The next 5 minutes of the movie is pretty cut and dry. I'll just explain it real fast just because I don't think there's much to do it.
He fargoes the money by tossing it into the river.
Moss and Anton, he tosses it, yeah. But after that, Moss falls asleep in Mexico, pays a mariachi player to
take him to the hospital.
Get him $100 to go to the doctor. On the other side of the fence, Anton's bought cotton balls and is bleeding from his leg. He explodes a
parked car
in order to get into the pharmacy as a distraction.
It's just a comparison of how like two guys go about tending their wounds. Yeah. One has the sanction of law-abiding society. One does not give a fuck. Yeah.
And so he takes the buckshot out of his leg. So they're both like hurt, but on the mend. The next sequence is Tommy Lee Jones talking with his secretary about how the DEA investigation is going. He mentioned that he's going to go to Odessa to visit Moss's wife, and he pulls over a man who's carrying some bodies from the crime scene. I didn't know what that really was. Like,
I don't know what that means.
Was it bodies, and what are they doing? It feels like one of those hangovers for people who read the book.
It's the bodies from the crime scene. Someone in local authority is cleaning up the crime scene and taking the bodies presumably to the morgue, and he just has to pull him over and yell at him because they're just really shittily secured under a tarp with a couple bungee cords, and I don't know. It's just a joke, I guess.
The theme. He's like, you can imagine a Tommy Lee Jones saying, like, back in my day, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
this is uncouth for a person in your position to do this. Okay, cool. So Harrelson visits Moss in the hospital.
Harrelson finds him even though he's been trying to lay low. Yeah. So that doesn't bode well for Llewellyn.
Yeah.
He
implies that Anton could be on his way to Odessa to kill his wife, so he's kind of dangling the stick.
He's using the stick and the carrot. Yeah.
Carrot stick. Just give me the money, it goes away.
Obviously, he would rather not have to face Anton in combat. Yes, he would rather work a deal out with Llewellyn. Yeah.
He's trying to pump Moss for all the information so that he can resolve it in the way that he prefers.
Right.
And then he tells him he's living in a hotel and he'll cut Moss in on the money, which may or may not be true. But in the same breath mentions that Anton will kill him even if he gets the money back. So he's like, I'm the best of your two options. This is immediately followed by Tommy Lee Jones interrogating Carla Jean.
Before we go, if I may say, one of my favorite quotes in the movie is, he's trying to scare him by talking about Anton. Oh, even before that, he says, "Oh, you were in Nam, I was in Nam," and he goes, "What's that make me, your buddy?" Whereas, just like the kids and the frat bros, it's the same dichotomy, but another instance is Anton will later, I forget who, but someone will give him. I think someone at the hotel gives him a break or something.
No, it's when he's crossing back into the United States, which is
That's right. The border guard lets him through because they're both vets. Lets Llewellyn through because they're both vets. So it's like some people care about your past, some people don't give a fuck, and you don't know which is which.
Yeah. So did it work? It could have equally not worked. But this time it worked.
As he says of Anton, what's this guy supposed to be, the ultimate badass? And Wells says, I wouldn't say that. I'd say he doesn't have a sense of humor. And I just think that's more insightful than it seems at first blush, only because, as we often talk about as comedians, like, humor requires a great deal of empathy and ability to try and inhabit other people's working model of the world, because that's how you can figure out what would be absurd or taboo to them and orchestrate it in a way that feels safe enough but surprising enough that they'll laugh. So humor requires empathy. And I just love that saying he doesn't have a sense of humor is basically, without saying it, saying he is a psychopath. Yeah. Only psychopaths could not have a sense of humor ever. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's also important to note that in the interrogation immediately after with Carla Jean, Tommy Lee Jones uses the tactic of fear to convince her by telling the story of this guy, Charlie, where he talks about, is it certain whether or not we're going to find him? Is it certain that he's going to die or not? Are we going to get away with it, or are we all dead? It's like Charlie took a job from a previous job that was a lot more dangerous, to just slaughter deer in a slaughterhouse.
Right.
But he tells the story about the deer like bucking and fucking up the mechanism. And even though Charlie had this like foolproof way of killing
to stay safe,
deer, he injured his shoulder, and he tells her basically nothing's certain. So Tommy Lee Jones not only is saying like this is probably going to happen, but nothing's certain. And I'm the closest thing you have certainty is the same exact thing that Harrelson is doing to Moss in the hospital.
Right. The movie repeatedly with back-to-backs goes, the criminal's method of following the trail of clues is identical to the officer's method of following the trail of clues. Which to me makes
this actually
including using fear, yeah.
It makes this the midpoint because it's got like a mere realization of the same thing.
It may be story-wise. I cut it the exact time-wise.
Especially because as we all know, the Act 3 is very truncated because we don't have a scene where it's like, oh no, the main characters are dying.
There's no climactic action sequence, period.
It's off-screen shit. So it's a lot shorter than it would.
But yeah, I think that's the main takeaway from that scene is that he does the same thing. That's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so presumably Moss tells Wells off screen where the money was, or he pieced it together. We don't know. But he's now at the border,
like that's too much of a leap.
Weeds.
That's such good detection. I think he made the deal. I choose to believe he made the deal off screen, which is yet another clue. They're saying, here's something that you have to infer, but it's almost definitely true. He must have made the deal. Otherwise, why would Woody Harrelson be here? Okay, see how we took an important plot point and did it off screen? We're going to do that even more coming up.
It does create a little bit of a plot hole in that later Moss tells Carly Jean that he's going to leave her all the money. But I guess we can infer that somehow they have worked out, Harrelson and him, that Harrelson actually will give him some of the money.
Harrelson said, I could even let you keep some of the money, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe he gave him like $50,000 or something like that out of the
Okay, so now speaking of the spider shot, I feel like this is a twin shot to the shot you called Anton Chigurh a spider in, is Woody coming up the stairs in the hotel.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like...
It's the same technique where he's blurry and he just calmly walks into frame and you go... It's used a lot in It Follows. Where you're like, oh, out of focus extras. Wait, that extra, that's the thing. That's the guy.
Right.
Oh,
right.
fuck.
It also happened, if you remember, in the pharmacy when he was getting all the stuff a little earlier in the movie.
Yeah.
In the pharmacy, we jump to a new location. We don't see anything, but we see like on the left side of the frame, we see a car, and it's shining in the sun, and the focus is on the gas tank.
Right.
And then we see Anton Chigurh come from behind the car down the hallway or down the walkway, like maybe,
just like in this movie, the sounds we choose to focus on. It's like
here's the point of what's going to happen is he's going to
They're literally deciding to make storytelling guide diegetic decisions.
Right.
Yeah, sure. The flies are so far away you probably wouldn't hear them if you were standing in this location. But the flies are the point of this shot, so you hear the flies.
And it's kind of a nihilistic emphasis to almost say that it's not all these things are true, but it's not as much that Anton did this. It's that this happened and Anton was there. Like it's this kind of feeling of he is he's just this kind of aspect of the scene.
To be concrete, what we're dancing around is this is the bit where he found Carson Wells, Woody Harrelson, and he sneaks up behind him and puts a gun in his back and says, we should go to your room. So Carson Wells' attempt basically came to very little, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wasn't in the movie that long.
For us, it's got that Game of Thrones stank on it where you're like, well, I wanted him to survive a little longer. I will read, if I may...
Please.
The meat of those quotes. I know where the satchel is. Of course, this is Woody Harrelson trying to barter for his life. I know where the satchel is. Anton, I know something better. I know where it's going to be. Oh yeah, where's that? It's going to be brought to me and placed at my feet. You don't know that to a certainty. I do know it to a certainty. And you know what's going to happen now, Carson? You should admit your situation. There would be more dignity in it. You go to hell. If the rule you follow brought you to this, of what use is the rule? And that's where I want to stop because I got to call bullshit on Anton here too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think it's very clear, especially because he will break his own quarter rule by the end of the movie. He just, and this is the only scene he smiles in. He likes fucking with people, but his internal systems, it's funny how everyone describes him, including Woody Harrelson, as, I guess you could say he's a killer, but he's got rules. He's got principles. And you're like, yeah, till he wants the money, or he has to break the rule to kill someone he wants to kill, because in the real world, there are not systems that remain consistent. And that's actually frightening, because if you follow that to its logical conclusion, that means there's no God, because there's no consistent system that guides the universe. Or if there is, it has no special interest in helping or hurting you. You're on your fucking own. And therefore, Anton is also full of shit. I just want to hammer that home. And it's interesting. He says, I know to a certainty the bag will be placed in my feet. No, it's not. He suffers greatly to get it. It's not placed at his feet. So Anton also just talks shit. Like, anyone who speaks confidently is full of shit.
Yeah,
anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all ego. It's all ego to say. It's that whole announcing your plans is a good way to hear God laugh kind of
right.
thing.
And his delusion is he thinks the fact that he's about to murder Woody means I must be right and he must be wrong. Otherwise, how would I be able to murder him? I don't know, because you have a gun and you were behind him, dude. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make you philosophically right. I found that the most interesting aspect of this scene. Oh, right. And then, of course, he goes on to say, of what use is your rule? And Woody says, do you have any idea how crazy you are?
Yeah.
You mean the nature of this conversation? I mean the nature of you, which is great because he easily could have said these lines in True Detective.
Yeah.
And then he says his last words, you can have the money, Anton. Boom! Shotgun blast to the chest.
Well, the phone rings.
And then a phone ringing. And, of course, we already mentioned it, but it is great. The sound of the phone ringing way louder than the sound of the shotgun blast that just killed a man. Yeah. And more surprising.
It also shows how tempered they all are, because no one flinches when the phone rings, which is very loud. So
I did watching it.
Well, yeah, exactly. But you'd expect that Anton would shoot immediately.
The phone, yeah.
No, he would shoot. He would kill Wells.
The phone rings
while
first.
The phone rang.
Right.
But the phone rings a few times, and then he shoots him.
And then picks up the phone, yeah.
Because it's just one of those things that usually in movies we see this scene time and time again where someone's all very tense, and then something happens like outside a car, has a pop or something like that.
Is Carson there? Is Carson there? Not in the sense that you mean.
Yeah.
Because it's Llewellyn on the other end, of course. Yeah. We can presume following up on the deal. Like he's going to go, did you get the bag? What do we do next? Right.
And it's like, I'm already going to kill you, but it's whether you need to give me the money or I'm going to kill you and your wife and whoever's in the way. And Moss threatens him back, which I thought was very... Like, this is Moss, I think, having his simplistic worldview, knowing he's out of his depth.
But I have heart. I'm going to fight
being
so
like,
hard.
I have to fight. Why? Because I'm the good guy. I always fight.
And you can tell from the shots, like, Anton is literally sitting in a room with the evidence that he's a stone cold killer, lifts his feet so the blood doesn't get on his shoes like a badass. And the camera angle looks up at him in reverence as he goes, like, I'm going to kill you, okay? We cut to Llewellyn, who is shot from behind, much smaller in frame, and sort of like hitting the phone and being upset. And Anthony goes like, no, I'm going to kill you. And you're man, you're over your head, dude.
Yeah, it's someone playing like the role as opposed to just being it.
He goes, you know how this is going to turn out, right? No. Yes, you do. It's like trying to calm a child down. Like, I'll kill you. So this is my offer. Right. And he says, I'm going to kill you, period. If you give me the money, I won't kill Carla Jean.
Right. And then we have a short scene between Bella and Wendell, which I just like it because I like the story that they chose, which is Tommy Lee Jones is reading a newspaper and tells a story about a couple being tortured for cashier's checks, and the perp was wearing a dog collar. And it's just like that was just a confluence of events. That's like, it's like if someone was to report on the Big Lebowski and like put it like also there was there and someone's toe was cut off. I don't really know what's going on. It's just like all the details are just so crazy and out of left field. His point seems to be that he just doesn't understand the world anymore.
Yeah, although I think there's one line again though, it's not true, dude. Like the Roman Empire, you know, tortured and executed people in ways more horrible than Anton Chigurh could ever imagine. But I do think the most resonant line for me there was, and they torture him too. I don't know why. Maybe their TV was broke, which I do think is an important point. And then Wendell laughs and he says, that's okay. Sometimes all you can do is laugh. Of course, again, the humor empathy thing. Sometimes you have to laugh in the face of incomprehensible cruelty, and that actually means you aren't a sociopath. Like, you follow me.
Yeah. Moss tries to get back to the States and is let through by mentioning he's a war vet.
He
visits the same clothing store.
That's it. No, sir. It's unusual.
Yeah, it's unusual. He gets back the money from the riverbank.
He gets a
Carla.
baller cowboy set of duds, dude.
Yeah,
he looks
tells
sharp.
you he's going to leave her all the money, and there's probably a bunch of other details, you know, that we're not privy to as the audience.
Well, also keep in mind, he said to Anton, I'm building a special project that's going to kill you. And we never find, because he is the kind of guy to like set traps, but you never find out whatever, if he even had a project in mind. Yeah.
While that's happening, Anton is arrived at the man who hired Wells' building, Stephen Root, and he kills him. And there's an accountant there, and the accountant's just kind of there to hear his thoughts. He's just terrified, and he's like, are you going to kill me? But Anton rather talk about he's confused why they used a transponder because it was the wrong tool, which is once again just a nod to Anton Chigurh thinking that the world is everything is a tool and he's a master of a few tools.
I thought he was referring to himself. He's saying it's insulting that you gave other people transponders because I'm the correct tool for the job. How dare you not use only me?
Yeah.
Which, how could you predict that would insult someone so much that they go rogue? That is pretty weird.
No. Once again, it's because we're starting to see that Anton has... We just saw him we thought that maybe he might have been told where to go and kill. He has no rhyme or reason. He's just out there killing because he sees it all as a point of, I am so good at this that no one will ever catch me.
And I assume he kills the accountant too. Because he says, are you going to kill me? And he says, that depends. Do you see me? So I think for the sake of tying up loose ends, he's dead as well. So this is where we find out that his motive for going rogue is not apparently the money. It's his resentment. However, I would argue it's probably both. He's such a romantic fuckhead. He would present it as some kind of rule thing, even if it, you know, for all we know, his mind really changed when he saw this $2 million up for grabs, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a fundamental arc for the Coen brothers at this point is someone overreaching, but also there's just money involved and someone can get it. And do you think you can get away with it is just such a Coen brothers type.
I think because they're more interested in what are the tactics people will employ to get the prize. The specifics of the prize don't matter. And money's such an easy way to set up the prize that they go, fine, it's money. Okay, so now how do the rats behave in the maze? You know, that's
usually
what
do crimes.
Usually do crimes in the case of the Coens, but
Carla Jean and her mother is in the next sequence heading to El Paso. The next scenes are following them. One of them helps the mother with the bags. Yeah, with the grandma. And pumps her for some information, which she totally gives away.
Someone from the cartel.
Yeah, from the cartel.
Yeah. She goes, we're going to El Paso. Don't ask me why. And he's like, where are you staying? And she goes, well, and it cuts away. So
yeah, it's like exactly all the information. Meanwhile, Carla Jean, who isn't there, who probably would have the foresight because she's not the kind of person who just assumes that everyone's like, I think what she say? Oh, at least there's one gentleman here in El Paso when it's because
Carla Jean stepped away to talk to Llewellyn on the phone.
I think Carla Jean knows the rub and would be like, don't tell them, but we just don't get that benefit because she's not in the scene because she's calling the sheriff and telling where Moss is planning on going in order to protect him. So she is also taking the deal because they both feel that they're out of the depth.
Right.
Anton, back on the road, has stalled his car and a local pulls over to give him a jump. And one of my favorite dialogues in the whole movie. Yes, which airport would one use in Alpine, which is presumably where they are right here. But he tells him airports are in El Paso and Dallas. So he knows, okay, so he's either in El Paso or Dallas because he's going to take a flight out.
Because he needs a flight.
Yeah. So Anton kills him and takes his truck. Can you get those chicken crates out of the back? Jump cut to him at a car wash hosing down the truck bed. Just once again, Anton, it's like if you had to film like someone eating a meal, the reason we don't is because it's kind of boring to us. So we usually just show someone starting a meal or finishing a meal, because those are the only two activities that aren't just consistently eating a meal. Now imagine if you're Anton Chigurh, killing people is with that same kind of laissez-faire attitude. Just so
it's the same as the Hound saying, "I'll eat every fucking chicken in this."
Yeah. He's just just jump cut to me having already killed the guy. It's almost like a joke now. Because
the point is, chickens.
Can I get those chickens out?
Chickens and unrepentant murder go together.
Okay.
So yeah. Llewellyn's
next
final
scene is in
scene.
El Paso. Moss meets the woman by the pool. And this is where they flirt and talk about getting beers together, because you know what beers they
I think
do,
it's
and he's like,
very important. And this is like, if you still are fixing to get upset that the hero's going to die off screen, they basically do the ham horn app at you as loud as they can right before it's going to happen. He says, "What are you doing?" Or she says, "What are you doing looking out the windows all the time?" And he says, "I'm just looking out for what's coming." And she says, "No one ever sees that." What's coming is the final standoff. We don't get to see it. They literally wove that exact thing into the dialogue, and I was still surprised. That's a hell of a twist. When the scene before the twist happens, the dialogue is, "This twist is about to happen," and you don't see it coming. That's just amazing to me.
Yeah, and the fallout, it basically is that Tommy Lee Jones arrives in medias res to witness rapid gunfire. The cartel are fleeing in a truck, and we see probably less than 1 second of a running panning shot of Moss's dead body in the same pool that he was just at a second ago, or presumably he could have stayed
I
there
slowed it
multiple
down.
days.
I think a random hotel worker, or I take that back. I'm pretty sure the body in the pool is a cartel guy, to show that Llewellyn got one shotgun blast off from the doorway, because it's definitely Llewellyn's body on the floor inside the hotel room. Regardless, I love that for everyone's efforts, the order never changed. Llewellyn was in the lead. The cartel was chasing him. Anton's one step behind that. The detective's one step behind that. No one ever caught up or fell behind. It just the machine ground to a halt.
Thing. Yeah, and so people died. I also thought that the shortest death reveal in any film ever is they felt the need to include a short sequence of Carla Jean crying when she drives up in the cab.
Yes,
because she looks at the sheriff's face and she knows that the next thing he's going to say is going to be, "Yeah, he's dead." And then we get a final shot, and it's once again from very far, so you can't see they're probably none of these bodies are Josh Brolin. It's probably just dummies or lookalikes.
Right.
Because why would you do it? Because the shot of him looking over a body in the morgue is Tommy Lee Jones looking over a body in the morgue is so distant that it almost feels like if you blink during the sequence, you can later infer from things that people say later in the movie, but you could totally miss the fact that Llewellyn's dead.
Right.
You just have to be a
when I saw it in theaters, people were asking people in their party if Llewellyn died happened? Or not. Yeah.
Exactly.
Love it.
So what I love is that he goes to talk to another sheriff about how modern crimes don't make sense to them and how senseless and violent
But in
they are.
retrospect, it's two sheriffs in white cowboy hats talk about how they hate dyed hair and piercings and how kids don't say sir or ma'am anymore, and also they're scared of Mexicans because of the crimes they do. And it's like, maybe this movie isn't about how Tommy Lee is right.
Right. And he refers to at the Desert Sands at one point off screen, Anton killed a desk clerk and then returned to the crime scene to kill more people.
Yeah.
And so his question to Tommy Lee Jones is, how do you fight against that? And then that jump cuts to Tommy Lee Jones going back to the crime scene, who we get a single shot, once again, a spider shot, behind the door. Anton is waiting for him. So it's like Anton has no reservations about coming to crime scenes multiple times because he'll just kill more people if they get in his way.
Right. Here's something
Why would you do that? That's insane, is what Tommy Lee Jones is doing. But I think the reason Tommy Lee Jones returns is he's like, you know what? That's the kind of killer I'm dealing with. I bet if I go back,
so it's worth a shot. And then, of course, Anton's returning because he figures Llewellyn may have hid the money well enough that the cartel didn't find it. So it's worth one more shot again for him to search the room. He wants to check the vent because he knows that's Llewellyn's MO. We never find, or does Anton have the money definitively?
Here, not definitively, but there's a single
this is where it gets real confusing.
That has the open vent, and then it pans over to bolts, and on the floor is a dime, and I think it's one of the same coins. Like, the idea is that it might be Anton because
that's true. Coins. It is, because we see Anton using a dime to unscrew the vent the first time. So here's my other question. Tommy Lee opens the door and walks in and sits on the bed, and Anton is gone. And it's unclear to me whether these are intercutting two different spaces and Anton was never really in the room that Tommy Lee Jones is in, or did he just Batman away or hide?
Yeah,
is Anton in the room that he enters?
If Anton would probably shut the door and kill him with a silenced rifle.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that they are playing with that. Either he is, now that he has the money, he's a little bit more precious about getting away with this, so he's not going to kill willy-nilly. Is one thing, unless he has complete control.
Or maybe I was thinking maybe he's in the room through the wall.
Or you're right.
Yeah,
it's the same idea. It's like it could be also displaced with space, where he's in a different room listening in to see if like someone's gonna come back so he can get the jump on him.
Right.
And he's just in the dark in a room right next to him. Or it's displaced in time is another thing to think of. Is that he was doing this as a kind of thing where it was like, this is him killing the cartel or something. Yeah. And then the last thing you can think of is just that it's like a surrealist metaphor where it's just like he could have been there, but we don't know if he was.
I was thinking it could be Tommy Lee Jones imagining that he's still in there. And he really was at one time because he finds the dime. But the truth is, yet again, you were one step behind him. He was probably in here while you were talking to the sheriff at the diner. Yeah.
And it's something that kind of bothers me. It doesn't really bother me, I guess, because I think that they've earned a lot of it, and I think that it has, any way you slice it, it does have some kind of artistic merit.
No, yeah,
but
it works.
Does take advantage of a very overused trope, which is just, I'm going to randomly throw a threat into a scene just to make it more tense. And I didn't like that because it didn't pay off in any way, but at least there's other things going for it. So it's not my favorite move by the Coen brothers, but, you know.
It's a great shot, though. He looks real scary.
Great shot. It's a great shot. There's at least that. But I think it's totally forgivable, and it might not even be bad, depending on how you internalize it and how you personally view it, because I think that there's a large openness to interpretation. So then it's not even. This is where it really gets like, come on, and it's like we're entering the last like three sequences of the movie. The first one is Carla Jean at her mother's funeral. Oh, no, sorry, I skipped something. Tommy Lee returns to his friend Ellis's place, who I assume is in Alpine, so it's just like, I'm in town, might as well talk to an old sheriff.
Yeah.
And they talk about how many cats he has, and Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh, well, we got to give that line. Job. How many of those you got now? Cats? Oh, I don't know, several. Depends what you mean by got. Some are half wild, some are just outlaws.
And I love that he's like, depends on what you mean by got, because it brings up the certainty question again. And when we talk about how previous or historical wisdom speaking truth about today's reality, he doesn't, quote, got all the cats because some of them are too wild.
And he leaves the door open so they have agency, so they're not got.
Yeah, so it's more, that line is more about the certainty of got being put into question, which I thought it was a very relevant thing, because it's like, having something, being in control of something isn't something that you can no one could ever have the certainty that they do. So I'm going to throw that back at you, because that's one of the reasons that you feel overmatched. Tommy Lee Jones talks about how he thought that God would come into his life the more he got older, and he doesn't blame him. In fact, he says that God probably thinks the same of him, implying that he thinks of himself as lowly, not degenerate, but just not in general proud of his life.
He's saying, why would God take interest in a random, boring dude's life?
And that echoes the line of how he thinks of himself, Tommy Lee Jones, that is, at the beginning in the first crime with probably, I don't know.
And he also asks Ellis, don't you want vengeance on the people that, because he's in a wheelchair, that injured you, that ended your career? And he said for a while, but now he doesn't. And I think, they are speaking to that. It seems to be this way for me. Life does not get less and less confusing. Like, you don't get old and be like, now it all makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no.
and that will be that will be the last thing we talk about, because that's the last scene. Just to kind of almost blaze through the last few sequences. Carla Jean's at his mother's funeral. Who I don't know. Do we know why she died, or is she a fallout of like other Mexican cartel? Like,
she says I got the cancer on the phone earlier in the movie, so I assume she succumbed to cancer.
Otherwise, it doesn't really pan out that when he was like, "Where are you going? Where are you going to meet?" Other than the fact that the cartel members were asking the mother and Carla Jean, not because they thought they had the money, but they thought they would get them to Llewellyn.
Right.
Which apparently worked.
I just think it's important also that Ellis says to Tommy Lee, which this may be the most on the nose I think the movie ever gets in dialogue. What you got ain't nothing new. This country's hard on people. You can't stop what's coming. It ain't all waiting on you. That's vanity. So the old man who thinks the world has left him, an even older man reminds him, no, you're going to die someday. The world moves on. That's vanity. It doesn't stay for you. It's the other way around.
I remember when I stopped knowing people who are editor-in-chief of our old publication in college.
Right.
Every editor-in-chief kind of talks about this, where I go like, well, at least I'm putting this in Dan and Zimbrowski's hands, or he's putting it in your hands. And I'm like, that means they're still good, because those guys are good. And then the first time that you hear like, who's the editor now? Some person. And you're like, it's fucking dead. It's so dead. It's not going to live. Because like, who else can do it?
Sure.
They were the lifeblood for 4 years, and you're just going to start off with a freshman and someone we don't even trust. And it's like, the reality is things go on if they want to go on. People find a way to reinvent it. Just like people before us were saying, like, these kids are in charge. It's always that kind of assumption that you know better because you've lived it. And there might be true in some cases, but the big laugh is that no one's really perfectly ready, and everyone just is just telling themselves that they have it in control.
Yeah.
So after the funeral, she goes back to her mother's house, notices an open window, and finds Anton in the bedroom like a fucking ghost. She tells him she doesn't know where the money is. She mentions that he has no cause to kill her, which is like what everyone has always said.
But he's obligated to kill her because he says Llewellyn gave his word, and she goes, "What do you mean, my husband
gave his word that he'd kill her if she didn't get the money?"
So he twists that. He says,
and then she's like, "That doesn't make no sense because they're all dead." She says,
the way he views it is, "I promised your husband I would kill you." Yeah.
And I love how he goes, "People always say the same thing," and he flips a coin. It's like, you're calling out my crazy, and people always say that, because you're fucking crazy. He's like, nope, I'm not crazy. Like, he has not changed one bit.
But that's the point, is she's the first victim in the movie who knows she's going to be killed, and it takes all the wind out of his sails. His ritual is completely ruined. And this is where you see that, I think most pointedly, that Anton Chigurh's full of shit because she says, you don't have to do this. And he says, people always say that. And I think what's very important is the follow-up. And she goes, that's because you don't. Like, that's why people say that, because it's true and you're crazy. And he just says, okay, does the coin game. Pardon. And I think it's great how she just calls him out, which no one else has done, and calls him out in a way where her plain spokenness also points out how, look, you think you're badass? Look how fucking pompous you are. Look at your haircut. You're kind of just a fucking loser nerd. You know what I mean? Because she goes, I knew you was crazy when I saw you sitting there. I know what's in store for me. I ain't going to call it. This is stupid. The coin don't have no say. It's just you. Yeah. And he goes, call it, call it, call it. She refuses. And so he says, or she goes, who cares about the coin? He says, I got here the same way the coin did, which again is just like romantic puffery. It's true. He's saying everything is random chance. How how poetic that I might by chance murder you this day. And it's like, fuck you, asshole. That's not that artistically interesting. Yeah.
Other than some random promise you made a dead man that wasn't even a promise to be. Like, promises mattered to begin with, much less someone who's dead.
If you agree with me, I know there's a fringe minority who think he didn't kill her, but he killed her because he checks his boots for blood.
Yeah, he checks his feet for blood, which is something that he cares about, blood getting on his shoes.
Then I truly believe that she refused to play the game and he killed her anyway, which means he's a goddamn hypocrite. No Joker are you, sir. You violated your own thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's definitely what happened.
That's the point,
because that's everything else lines up. But once again, the film itself presents it in a way that there's no definitive answer.
Oh, and it's such a gut punch
into the certainty aspect of the storytelling.
Because if you're used to movie law, if the villain is Two-Face and that's his thing, and in the last scene it lands spare the hero, you're like, oh, thank God. And then it's like, Two-Face can just shoot him anyway. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right.
What a gut punch. Yeah.
Once again, this sense of this unreliable narrator as the camera of when things are in close-up and stuff. Like, I love how it's just kind of a mess. Like, the idea is that it doesn't really have any structure. It has things it does, like going back to the gas tank and blowing up the gas tank, that shot, to the edit of this shot going from she might still be alive to him cleaning it, like checking for blood on his boots.
Yeah.
Life sometimes determines, sometimes if life is being taken, the film will be like, look at this life being taken. Other times it won't care, just as much as it doesn't care about coins and little vents and satchels of money.
Right.
Objects and people are indistinguishable.
And it's amazing how film and you, every human being listening to this, for example, have the ability to invest a dime. A dime can mean everything. A dime can mean that you no longer belong in this world and there is no God because you showed up seconds too late to save a friend of a friend from getting murdered. Mm-hmm. Or a dime can be worth 10 cents, which can't even buy you a gumball. Mm-hmm. Everything about life is in this movie. Yeah.
It's
a good one.
Then it cuts. Some time may have passed, or no, some time passes in just that he got in his car. He's driving away through a green light, so he's not even doing anything bad, but he's sideswiped by a car. He stumbles out of the curb, his arm broken.
Once again, sorry, just got to say, I know we're well over 2 hours, so we got to go, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention this on a technical level for diegesis-wise. Every time someone gets T-boned by a car in a movie, they shoot it the same way. And in this, they shoot it the same way, but the car comes from behind you instead of towards you, which seems at first like it would be less scary, but it's way more scary and truer to the character because the character who gets hit by the car obviously doesn't see the car, so you shouldn't see the car. It's simple decisions like that make them the greatest living filmmakers, that they go back to basics. They don't just go, this is how you shoot a car getting T-boned, surprisingly. They go, why do people shoot a car getting T-boned this way? What does film grammar tell us about what each possible way of shooting that would mean? What do we want to say? Okay, so we'll shoot it this way. Just simple, but makes everything so wonderful.
Yeah.
All right.
Spicy meatball.
Get us, you got to get us home, man.
Oh, yeah, I can. So he sits down on a curb with his arm broken. Some kids and bike up. As we referenced, they're nice to him. And it's one of the only times that we get that comedy and repetition from the Coen brothers with the line, "You got bones sticking out of your arm." I'm okay. I just need to sit here. Yeah. Yeah. The kid gives him his shirt. And as you alluded to before, as a parallel to the college kids trying to get every piece of money they can out of Llewellyn, these kids are more than happy to give him a shirt because they just see a guy who just went through a terrible car accident. It's not like he's a drunk Llewellyn was bleeding in that other scene. They knew he was not having a good day as well. Yes. So it's just depends on who you run into.
Exactly. And Anton, in this case, offers them money, presumably because he thinks it would make them more likely to not report him to the police.
He was already gone when the police arrived.
But they're seriously like, "Mister, I don't need money for helping out," you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I also I wrote this note. Imagine being a child actor trying to make it into Hollywood and getting to show off your little puffy boy nips in a fucking Coen Brothers movie. He walks away. And of course, this is the way they definitively prove that the film is about random chance. Because if he got no comeuppance, it seems to say that this is a universe where crime pays and he's the ultimate badass. If he gets a full comeuppance, it's a movie that seems to say karma exists, good things happen to good people, and vice versa. So they had to do both. It actually feels redundant when you're watching it, given traditional screenwriting, logic. You're like, well, if he's going to survive the car wreck, why get in the car wreck? Because that's the point. He's human. He can get hit by a car. He can also survive the car crash and still keep the money. Whatever. It's almost like the movie world stops caring entirely and is like, yeah, whatever. Life goes on.
Its point is try to nullify your expectations of it having,
yes,
like George R.R. Martin justice or like typical Hollywood movie justice where the good guys get the good stuff. It's like those are two answers to the question. Everyone dies or everyone lives, or all the good people live, rather. And in this, it's just like, yeah, he was doing everything right. He was going through a green light. He just got hit.
Yep.
And his bone is broken and he might be caught. But we don't know. So he tries to get away, and that's how we leave him.
Yeah.
The last scene of the movie is Tommy Lee Jones fresh from retirement, telling his wife different things he could do that day. He seems aimless. He doesn't know what he's going to do.
He's retired,
and she's like, well, I'm not retired, so, you figure it out, which is the answer to how do you spend your leisure time once you're retired? You figure it out. So he tells her two dreams he had the previous night, and there's two dreams, and I want to unpack kind of what they mean, as it's the final kind of dialogue in the movie.
Yeah.
The second one especially kind of wrapping up the movie entirely. So the first one is he was going to meet his dad in town, and he was going to get some money so that he could, buy some stuff. So this is, I think, him trying to connect with the earlier parts of his life, and also, remember, on top of everything, since it's a nihilistic kind of, film/novel, none of this means anything, but sometimes when there's bookends, you have to infer the meaning to see if they're trying to say something, kind of like we just did with the why did Anton Chigurh even get in a car crash
if he was just going to walk away, yeah.
In this case, I think you have two different times. You have Tommy Lee Jones in the first dream being like a young kid, and then Tommy Lee Jones being like, it feels like an adult.
And I think a lot of people incorrectly think the first dream is just filler dialogue to get to the second dream, but it's not.
Because the whole point about him trying to get money is that he says, I think I lost it.
I think I lost it. And I don't know for sure, but I feel like I lost it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that becomes more relevant with the second dream, which is...
Well, it's disappointment, but I also think it's him losing... I think it's also echoes of him losing... I thought I understood the way the world worked. You do this, you give the money, that's the transaction. I lost the money. I don't have any currency in the new system. Yeah.
Or even just that when you're young and looking at wisdom from, in this case, his dad or the elders,
right?
He didn't glean the.
He feels like he fell short of the legend he thought they were paving. Yeah. He feels, he lost.
I think it's too Tommy Lee Jones. I think it's Tommy Lee Jones feeling like, well, kids aren't going to listen to old people, and old people won't change. So the second dream is that
much longer dream.
It was like we were in older times, riding horseback through a pass in the mountain. It was cold and there was snow on the ground. He rode past me and kept on going. Never said nothing going by, just rode on past. He had his blanket wrapped around him and his head down. When he rode past, I seen he was carrying a fire and a horn, the way people used to do, and I could see the horn from the light inside of it, about the color of the moon. And in the dream, I knew that he was going to on ahead. He was fixing to make a fire somewhere out there in all that dark and all that cold. And I knew that I never got there. Whenever I got there, he'd be there. And then I woke up. So what does that mean?
When I got there, the camp would be set up. Yeah. I obviously I think the level everyone picks up on is like, you growing up and realizing your parents are only human and they were also navigating a confusing life. You think dad is going to be in the afterlife waiting for you is also the literal version. So maybe he's lost his faith, like literally lost his faith in the existence of an afterlife, or that his dad still exists as a soul. But also it could just be on the more basic level, he's lost faith in the ability of the wisdom of elders to guide us because the world changes so rapidly. What does his dad's horn of fire mean by the time he gets there?
I mean, it's a lantern, so
right,
it's like,
exactly.
It's just the idea of like showing. I think it represents wisdom. I think it represents certainty in the darkness.
But then I woke up has to mean, and now I don't believe any of that anymore.
Yes,
right?
because he's like, here's my assumption is that I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there making the camp. But then I woke up, meaning our elders really didn't.
That was
the certainty of our elders it makes it feel nice that when our elders tell us it's going to be like this, just listen to this wisdom. That it's going, all right, well, the thing that I was looking for is to have faith in something so I didn't have to stay up every night worrying about whether or not I'm going to be killed by the Anton Chigurhs of the world or, all the way down to, like, I don't think my life is going the way that I want to go or, I got, whatever problem it may be. You always want faith in some kind of certainty, and he's arguing here that he woke up and he realizes that there is no God. He didn't get closer to God. He's not getting closer to any form of wisdom through his being a lawman. He woke up to the fact that there is no certainty ever.
Quite literally, that is a dream. I had a dream, and then I woke up and realized, but it's a dream. It's not reality. Yeah.
Right. Which is,
I also just think it's funny. This was pointed out on Screen Prism's coverage of the film. There does seem to be enough awareness in the dialogue, especially with the way the wife acts, that it's pretty awesome as a structural joke for a movie where we wanted it to end with a crazy gunfight between two badasses, that it ended with a guy describing his dreams from last night, which is famously joked about as something boring no one wants to hear. Like, no one wants to hear you describe your dreams, Tommy Lee Jones.
Well,
there was supposed to be a gunfight.
He's got that voice. Somewhere out there in all that dark and all that cold.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, fuck, he's a fucking Tommy Lee Jones, baby.
And Josh Brolin, I assume, for Men in Black, was following him around taking notes the whole time they were shooting this.
Right. So that's kind of the rundown of it. I like movies that beg questions and don't give answers. And this is one that is on the top of my list for that. Because it does give answers and then says the answers are constantly unwriting themselves. That is what life is. That feels like that is both propaganda, meaning that's both a thesis, but that's also the thesis is inherent in the thesis is the lack of faith in anything, including the thesis itself. So that to me...
Yes. In the same way that a classic paradox that I embrace is that in a tolerant society... the one thing you can't tolerate is violent intolerance, and that doesn't make you a hypocrite. It makes it that's your specific rule, that to maintain tolerance, you think it's worth it to be tolerant of everything except intolerance. You're allowed to make your system whatever you want, as long as you can get everyone to have faith in it. So it's interesting that I do think to some degree, the one thing that most existentialists or /nihilists would say is, I do believe everything is meaningless, but that doesn't mean what I'm saying now is meaningless. What I'm saying now is true. Everything is meaningless. It's a never-ending paradox that cycles back on itself. But
that's the whole thing. And that rings specifically true to me. In my experience, because sometimes I've worked really hard on something and it didn't come out, or sometimes I didn't work hard at all and I was super lucky. All these things, and every other iteration is somewhere in between.
And I would argue that the existence of paradoxes arising from a system of thought do not invalidate the system of thought necessarily.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't offer any type of soundbite wisdom in terms of how you should lead your life, other than don't look for that kind of thing, I think.
Figure out your situation
arguable whether
yourself.
It's even saying that at all.
Yeah.
It could just be presenting the facts. And I mean, I like to think that there's always a deeper sense to stories. And I like to think that the reason that everyone's excited about this project when they wrote it or, were involved in it was the fact that it does say something that is fundamentally true. But whether or not you listen to that wisdom is what it's trying to ask of whether or not ought you do that or ought you not. Should you do that?
Yeah.
Should you not? It doesn't seem to fuck with that shit. So
I think it says the only thing which is fundamentally true, in my opinion, which is X equals X. The way you say that in words is it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Every single moment in time space is wholly unique and beholden to the infinite number of factors that caused it to manifest and apply to it at that time space. You know what I mean? Like, our stupid meat brains are designed to try and categorize things so that we can create rules that apply to multiple situations. And that works fairly well to some degree, but it doesn't negate the fact that no two situations have ever been alike. Every situation is differentiable from every other situation.
Yeah.
It is what it is the only true thing you could ever say, because you can negate everything else. Also, did you hear they just did the first quantum physics experiment that proves most physicists already fully believe this, but it proved evidentiarily that two people in two different rooms observing the same experiment in different ways can observe two incompatible realities, but with 100% certainty. You live in a universe that is not certain. That is now proven on the subatomic level. Sorry. Fuck you, audience.
Damn.
Oscar, please.
Damn. Yeah, so I think it might be I don't know. It's definitely top 3. Might be number 1.
Movies,
Not
period?
Sure. No, Coen Brothers.
Oh,
movies,
okay.
But
Easily.
To that extension, yes, a little bit. Probably top 10. Definitely top 10.
Top 3 Coens without question, I would say.
Yeah, that's my argument.
Yes, it hurts to put something like Oh Brother at 4, but
I know
there's also Fargo and Lebowski, man. This shit
exactly.
It's a stiff competition, man.
Right. And I think in this point in the career, they're fucking here. You know, like they can do no wrong at this point. They've kind of have a J.K. Rowling syndrome. Where it's just the fans of them are just going to emphatically be their fans, which I count myself amongst.
If you're listening to this, you probably do too.
Yeah, because like I'll try to be as aware as I can over the next few that we do on this podcast. It's not that there's stinkers in there, but it's just like how do you get on this level and scaffolding and step down or step up?
Right.
You can't really do either without bringing a conversation into the mix that is going to have people doing thumbs up and thumbs down at you for the rest of your career because it's so, it's so well crafted.
Yeah, if I ever got a single thumbs down in my career, I would pack it up and quit.
A single one.
So please, listeners, like and subscribe. If we get a single thumbs down on any social media platform, we quit. And we haven't asked this in a long time, and I noticed it totally stagnated, but it really does help us. If you find the time, go over to iTunes. Give us a 5-star review or some kind words in the review section, please. I'm doing wrap-up lingo because we're at 2 hours and 20 minutes. So
yeah, go watch it. Go fucking watch it.
Again, because you probably have, but again, it's been long enough. Even if you watched it yesterday, it's been long enough. We're the CBBs.
Bye.
Bye.